Sound check, check. Hey Cheryl, this is Natalie. Can you hear me? If not, I'm going to try to connect you on my phone for audio.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ms. Henry.
Here.
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 Yes. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Liberty.
Thank you. Announcements. Educator of the Year. I'm excited to inform you all about the upcoming St. Louis Public Schools Educator of the Year event on Wednesday, May 10th. This event is a special occasion to honor and celebrate the educators in our district nominated by their peers for going above and beyond in serving their students. One of these exceptional educators will be named the St. Louis Public Schools Educator of the Year and will serve as our representative for the Missouri Educator of the Year. It is fitting that this event takes place during Teacher Appreciation Week, highlighting the remarkable contributions of our educators who make a difference in the lives of our students every day. I look forward to celebrating our educators and their achievements with you. Patrick Henry, Downtown Academy, Green Ribbon School. I'm proud to announce the Patrick Henry Downtown Academy Elementary School has received a recognition from the U.S. Department of Education as the 2023 Green Ribbon School thanks to its innovative efforts to reduce environmental impact and the utility costs, improve health and wellness, and ensure sustainability education. This is a testament to our students, staff, and families' dedication to creating a sustainable and environmental friendly learning environment. Patrick Henry transformed its historic building into a haven of sustainable efforts with 100% LED lighting and walking-only field trip policy, among other initiatives. In addition, Patrick Henry embraces the whole school, whole community, whole child model and of addressing health in schools. Across the country, 26 schools, 11 districts, and 4 post-secondary institutions were honored as 2023 U.S. Department of Education Green Ribbon Schools. Let's all congratulate Dr. Deborah Rogers, the staff at Patrick Henry, the students, the community partners for this honor. Let's also congratulate Dr. Williams because she was one of the biggest rah-rah for our students. Thank you. Harris-Stowe dual enrollment finish line graduation. Early this afternoon, 28 SLPS high school seniors crossed the finish line at Harris-Stowe State University. The 28 graduates are our largest graduating class since the pandemic due to reduced classroom sizes and virtual, only options for our students. This year, students had access to college prep English and math, college credit English, and our new college credit engineering courses through the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, Mapping for Change. During the ceremony, Dr. Latanya Collins-Smith saluted all of the scholars for their collective college credit GPA being over a 3.5. Developed through an equitable lens, the Finish Line Dual Enrollment Program provides university access and opportunity to all learning communities, even those who have not considered or would generally be ineligible for traditional dual enrollment opportunities. Superintendent announcements. Dr. Nicole, Spirit of Excellence.
Thank you very much, President Cousins, and please excuse my voice. I am suffering from allergies, so thank you for bearing with me this evening. We are so excited, first of all, to just recognize, celebrate, and honor our teachers during Teacher Appreciation Week. So I do want to take a moment just to echo what President Cousins shared with us and just say, Happy Teachers Appreciation Week. Thank you for the awesome work that you do each and every day to ensure that every child, every day, in every classroom here in the St. Louis Public Schools has the high-quality education he or she so richly deserves. So thank you for your dedication, commitment, and service. Let's take a moment and give them a rousing round of applause. I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to also recognize and celebrate and honor our nurses. Our nurses here in the St. Louis Public Schools, they are just a treasure. They are awesome. Every day they show up to serve our children and staff members to keep us healthy, to ensure that we are focused on healthy eating habits and taking care of ourselves. And so I do want to take a moment to recognize our nurses for keeping our children and our staff members safe and healthy each and every day here in St. Louis Public Schools. Thank you to our nurses, and I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment and recognize our head nurse here in the St. Louis Public Schools, Nurse Harrington. Let's give them a rousing round of applause. Continuing with our spirit of excellence, we are so excited to welcome Malamphy Botanical Garden Investigative Learning Center. I see our scholars ready to perform. Our principal, Dr. Kelly Casper, I know, we came out to hear our scholars. Our principal, Dr. Kelly Casper, Mr. Jason Bresman, our assistant principal, Ms. Angelique Brown, assistant principal, and our music teacher, Jennifer Durmer. I'm going to take a moment just to recognize all of our students who are here this evening. Samira Little, Alim Rodney, Diego Acosta Buenrostro, Joshua McConnell Jr., Sir Williams, Cesar Aron Vasquez, Jace Harris, Camilla Beal, Logan Steele, I hear, thank you, Naomi Taylor, and Malaysia Jackson. I think we also have Renelle McDade, who will do a solo for us this evening, and Julia Brent, who should be here this evening. So thank you so much. We are just going to sit back, relax, and hear the musical talents of our Malamphy Botanical Garden Investigative Learning Center scholars. Thank you for being here this evening. We are one. What a beautiful way to unite us, to think about how from the voices and the musical talents of our children, we learn how important it is to be one. Thank you so much again to our Melanphy Botanical Garden Investigative Learning Center. Let's give them one more rousing round of applause. Thank you, families. Thank you for entrusting us with your most precious gift, your children. We deeply appreciate that honor. I do want to take a moment, and please, I hope that you'll read our newsletter. It came out this evening. I do want to recognize the Office of Institutional Advancement under the leadership of Deputy Willis and her team, George Stiles, and so forth. Thank you so much. Our newsletter is out, but I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment and just recognize and celebrate our 7-member elected board for their leadership, commitment, and service. Our President, Tony Cousins, Matt Davis, our Vice President, Donna Jones, our Secretary, and board members, Natalie Vowell, Emily Hubbard, Sadie Weiss, and Tracy Hikes. Let's give them a rousing round of applause. And lastly, I do want to recognize our student board members. They are seniors. Yes, let's give them a rousing round of applause. They've served well. So I want to take a moment and say congratulations to our student board members. Let's celebrate their accomplishments of these graduating seniors. Layla, Alahari, Sonali Sharma, and Raquan Strickland. They're all going on to college. They're seniors. Layla plans to attend the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Sonali plans to attend Washington University here in St. Louis, Missouri. And Raquan plans to attend Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's give them a rousing round of applause. We know that they have bright futures in front of them, and we only hope that they will come back and serve right here in the St. Louis Public Schools. So thank you. I'd like to invite up our first presentation this evening. I'm going to turn it over to our facilities update under the leadership of our, I'm sorry, I'm not going to invite, I apologize, President Cousins. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I know we have to go back to approval of minutes.
I'd like to get a motion to approve April 11, 2023 minutes.
I'll move to approve the April 11, 2023 minutes.
Second. Ms. Henry.
Mr. Hikes,
Abstain.
Ms. Weiss,
Abstain since I wasn't here.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Cousins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Dr. Williams.
I'm sorry. I got a little ahead of myself there. Thank you so much. I'm so excited about the presentations this evening. Our first presentation is from our Deputy Superintendent for Operations. I'm going to ask Deputy Watson to come forward and introduce the information around facilities, our Central Visual Performing Arts, Collegiate School of Medicine and Bioscience, and the work that we're doing to our facilities across our district to ensure that we have 21st century learning environments for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. To the board, listening public, Square Watson, Deputy Superintendent of Operation, and tonight we'll be providing an update for our Central Visual Performing Arts, Collegiate Science Biomedical School, some updates in regards to some facilities. As the presentation is getting prepared, I'd first like to acknowledge the commitment, dedication, and support to ensure that all of our scholars and staff and leadership were afforded the opportunity to return in person after Thanksgiving in mid-January for Central students and staff. I would also like to extend this invitation to thank the following. The St. Louis Public Schools team, that includes network superintendents, teacher staff, and all of the scholars within the Central CSMB complex. In addition to that, our operations team, our facilities team, our maintenance and custodial team, food service, transportation, safety and security. Also, the environmental consultants. We had a lot of environmental teams on site. That includes environmental consultants, Impact, Alliance, General Waste Services, Midwest, Advance, and Talbert. Also, our painting contractors. Our painters donated at least a weekend of the hours to paint the facility. That includes Shaheed Painting. MBWB certified. And we did have donations of at least 50 gallons of paint and supplies by Sherwin Williams. In addition, the following contractors helped to really kind of provide some of the necessary updates to allow our scholars and staff to return, which includes C. Barlow Contracting and Negwar, who provided a lot of our supplies and our door hardware, including our doors. Hankins Construction and Landmark were the contractors who did the installation of window shades. Vega Construction. I also like to thank the union members of the Painters District Council number 58. Their volunteers include, and I have a list and host of names. P&A Drywall Supply, they help to provide supplies and more materials to the complex. And a lot of tools donated by the Trades Institute of Midwest District Council number 58. And also for the Painters and Allied Trades for Children's Hope, PATCH as an acronym. And last but not least, I'd like to extend a special thanks to Corrigan Clark, i.e. Idner. So tonight's presentation will be led by Corrigan Clark, i.e. Idner, in regards to the plans and the vision for Central CSMB Complex. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Idner, Mr. Greg Goebel, Steve Raskin, and Ms. Tiffany Dawkins.
Thank you. We're all very pleased to be here tonight with you and excited at the opportunity you've given us. I have some exciting stuff that's visual in effect and sort of some initial ideas about some of the things we might be able to do for you. But first, I'm going to let my great team here talk about some of the things that have already been accomplished and what those things are. So, Steve.
Okay, thank you. So we have a brief agenda for you this evening to kind of outline a number of the things that have been going on over the last couple of months. So the Corrigan Clark Idner team has worked very hard with the district's facility, the maintenance staff, working with Mr. Watson and his group, as well as many of the partners that he had mentioned earlier to really get the building ready for the fall. But one of the things we're going to talk about today is just what some of those steps are that we've done over the last couple of months, what intermediate steps are, and what the future may hold. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about project objectives. What are we trying to accomplish at Central Visual Performing Arts? We'll talk about some of the recent improvements as well. We'll also talk a little bit about safety and security elements at the school. We'll talk a little bit about a facility assessment and what that entails, both from a mechanical, electrical, and an architectural perspective. We'll also talk about the site and some of the assessments that we've done thus far in the future. We'll also take a glimpse at what the future work might look like, whether it be for in the upcoming summer, the fall, in the years to come. And then, as Greg had mentioned, talk about a little bit about visioning and what that might look like for the school moving forward. So when we talk about project objectives, it's really what are we trying to accomplish at this individual school. When we look at CVPA and the CSMB complex, we really talk about the existing facility and trying to analyze what that building is. It's a very old facility. In many cases, it's got some wonderful bones and it's got some wonderful infrastructure. Other areas are really in need of some additional resources. So the team over the last couple of months has really gone through with architects, engineers, planners, and contractors to really start to evaluate that process. We are known by no means complete in that evaluation, but we are making good strides and making some excellent progress. We'll also talk about some of the planning process. One of the things we'll be looking toward is talking to the district's staff, the teachers, the administration, and community in terms of what it might be in the future. We'll be reviewing things like programming. We'll talk about interior design. We'll talk about some of the exterior or interior building elements. We'll talk about additional safety and security improvements. We'll talk about interior signage and exterior signage and wayfinding to make the building more accessible to the community. We'll also talk in terms of the overall scope of the work, the phase of some of that work, the schedule of some of that work, and clearly the budget as it might be affected by some of the things that we're talking about as well.
So as we started working with the district, we can clearly see that one of the biggest objectives and goals, sort of since we've got the call, was to apply some light improvements. One, starting off with just adding and bringing some more light and joy to the space of the school for those students who would be returning in January. So throughout time, we've seen a number of plastic work, some more painting, and CVPA working with sort of alumni, community artists, as well as the district to bring some more life to some of the halls in CVPA, starting with some of the beautiful murals and new sort of paintings within the school, some of the studios, and some of the door replacements as well. So one thing that we sort of captured, one beginning on the exterior of A, B, C, and D are some of the primary entries into the school. We've noticed and identified the yellow dots are the administrations within these schools, and sort of seeing that as an opportunity to bring administration as well as access that the students are using to get into the schools as one of the first things that we could possibly address. We've worked with, we've seen the wonderful work that Rallo Contracting has done within the school, also under the constraints of making sure that those students are entering in January, and they've replaced some doors and some frames. About probably over 135 doors have been replaced within CVPA, as well as some upgrades to some hardware to those doors, and they've just worked diligently and very quickly, I would say.
So some of the things as part of the assessment that you'll identify are the things that you can see, and oftentimes are the things that you can't see. So part of our evaluation is also starting to take a look at the building infrastructure, specifically the mechanical systems and the equipment. What you're looking at right there is a diagram. It's part of our exercise in terms of looking at all of your rooftop package units and identifying the longevity, the lifespan of those units. Are they effective? Are they efficient? Are they functioning? Are they being properly maintained? So this is really part and parcel to that evaluation process. We'll be looking at things that you can see, but we'll also be spending a lot of time looking at things that clearly the community and the public don't see often.
So with our startup getting into the building, we've provided sort of a light survey, a light facility assessment. These images here are of the existing office spaces within the school. To the left would be CVPA, and to the right would be collegiate, and those are current conditions. Next, my favorite portion of what we saw in CVPA are the bathrooms and locker rooms. As we can see, they do need some upgrades, and renovations would be a priority for these schools here. Some of the images show some toilet and sort of sink fixtures that are missing, and also some ADA requirements that are needed for some of the showers and the locker rooms, as well as the entries into these bathrooms.
So as we get outside the space, we also look at areas on the building envelope. We'll look at roofs, we'll look at walls, we'll look at windows, we'll look at perimeter doors and assemblies such as that. We'll also be evaluating everything from the site and vehicular circulation. The image that you see in front of you on the far right-hand side is the parking lot. So when we look at things like the outside of the facility, we look at parking lots, we look at drainage, we look at the condition of the retaining walls and the fencing, all the exterior envelopes, which are really part and parcel of what the school is as well. Some of the other things we're looking at are some of the interior spaces, and we're looking at these in the context of not just how do they function from a curriculum and a student perspective, but also how can they enhance the overall safety and security of those buildings. We look at spaces that can be provided as areas of refuge in the future. School safety and security means different things nowadays, so we look for opportunities to take existing spaces and convert them into areas of refuge that can be used in the future to make students and staff safe.
So moving outward again, we've conducted some site assessments, primarily looking at the sidewalks, possible renovation areas, as well as bus drop-offs and zoning. So some of the main concerns that we've identified and also heard from sort of staff at these schools is that there's a lot of friction and issues happening with the buses, as well as with normal vehicles that are traveling along sort of the north and south, those primary roads of Arsenal and Kemper, not so much along Kings Highway. So we've identified some of the primary entry points along Kemper and as well as Arsenal, with just looking at what can be the priorities for some of these renovations to the site. Could the buses be, could they move around the site differently? Are there primary and large enough areas for students to be loaded onto buses and loaded off? And we've indicated that we could possibly start with the north end, also the southern end would need some work, and then prioritizing 3 for the back end of Arsenal as well as Kings Highway.
So really some of the next steps is we identify through the assessment some of the different priorities. We'll start to look at areas that are in need of improvement. We'll start to quantify those costs. We'll identify square footages. We'll identify unit pricing. And ultimately, we'll start to develop scopes of work, project schedules, and budgets. What you see in front of you is some of the proposed improvements, as Tiffany had mentioned, with some of the sidewalks. And this is an analysis we go through to identify what's the most important, what is the highest priority, and what some of those costs might associate. And then ultimately, we start to develop a project list. Again, as Mr. Watson had mentioned, the tremendous efforts of all the community and business leaders that really pitched in to really open up the building in time for the students in the fall. So we've identified a number of projects that are either finished or nearing completion. We'll start to look at a series of things that potentially for summer 23 projects, there could be additional improvements to some of the windows, some of the doors, some of the walkways, potentially even some of the toilet rooms. And then as we start to move forward, we look at more significant building improvements, whether they be building entrances, circulation. We look at areas in terms of security and technology, as well as safety in terms of improving the building as well. So really it becomes a part and parcel program to identify needs, schedules, and budgets moving forward for the project.
So the next part of this is going to be interesting and fun, I think. And we're part of a firm that has been around St. Louis for 125 years. It's Inner Architects. The interesting thing is a number of the schools that you live in are buildings that our firm designed, and frankly, we're still maintaining those all over the country. What I'm going to caution you about is that we heard what was said and conveyed to us through the many meetings we've had, but we really didn't engage in a back and forth design dialogue. We just took a guess at some things in response to the things that we had heard. So if you see these things and are excited, we're glad you are, but frankly, the best design work happens as a result of a dialogue between us and all of you. And so that's what we're looking for, is to sit down and talk with teachers and faculty and students to make sure the choices we're making moving forward are the ones that you want the most and need. So a lot of times when people look at an older building, they can't really understand what you can do with it to make it something different than it currently is. And so I'm going to start by sharing a story that isn't one of your projects, but was one from a district that had challenges in some ways similar to yours. It was the East St. Louis School District. We worked there for about a decade. The final product that we did there was a high school renovation. And I'm going to start by showing you what the building looked like before we started. So it was a 50s era building, sort of looking like buildings back then did. But obviously they had cash flow problems at times, and it was difficult to maintain the building, especially in lieu of much of the equipment not being kept up to date. There was a lot of deferred maintenance, and at the beginning it was quite a project to consider making something new of. But that's the vision that we created for that. So I'll go back briefly to let you see the first and then the second. We recladded the entire front of the building and made that. And frankly, it didn't stop there. Every component piece of the building was renovated at the same time. Now, we realize that your budget may not support something as aggressive as this, but we don't have to be that aggressive to have a big impact. This was a courtyard space. All this speaks to vision. Courtyard spaces are difficult to maintain. There's no way to get the lawnmowers in there, and to get the rubbish and the leaves and everything out of there is a challenge as well. They were having problems maintaining it. And so we said, well, we could do something different. What we did is this: we infilled that courtyard with additional space, and their main library volume went into the space that was previously the courtyard. So the maintenance issues went away. They got a great, big, nice, new, brand new library fit into that space. And everything in the building we did sort of at this level of polished. And I would argue that if you look at it, in many cases, people see it and they think it's a place of higher education because it's polished to that degree. We can take an old building and make it into something special and new without losing the charm that it has as an old building. We also created a career and technical education facility that was attached to the building. Like I said, a significant project that went on over a period of 4 or 5 years, and it was transformative to the school district. So now you have a sense of what we can do. Now let's talk about some of your projects. So the first thing is we look at the building here collectively and we say, how do we acknowledge the fact that there are different organizations working within the school? It's a shared building, but it has to have something going on to tell people who are arriving where the different parts are and give them a face and a place and a name. So we're going to look at all these different pieces and talk a little bit about each of them. The first is, from a safety standpoint, the streetscape is incredibly important. It's where buses and cars discharge kids. It should be safe. It should be broad enough to get out of cars and buses without worrying about getting into traffic. So we think a lot of this exercise is just to rework the grade in front of the building to get appropriate curbs and sidewalks, some sitting, some lighting to make it safe if it's used during the evening hours, all the obvious things that aren't currently happening. So We then start to look at the things we can do about focusing on one area or the other. So in this case, the entry on the south side of the building is challenging because there's a relatively steep grade over there and the parking lot is embedded in there and lower. Funny thing is, the retaining wall that's on the left side of this image, you can't quite see it, it's failing and has to be replaced. So if you move the retaining wall in about 25 feet, you now have a bus lane. And so you're going to rebuild the retaining wall regardless. We're going to move it. You'll have a secure bus lane that will discharge kids onto a safe sidewalk, and they'll be able to walk straight into the door from there. The next thing is we're looking on the other side of the building, and we know we need entries that are defined. This is the entry. It's a chain link fence. It doesn't do anything you need it to do, starting with security. So what we think is a safe and secure vestibule is a real space that has administrative components associated with it, so there's somebody to control the door. Again, some of these were guesses that we made, but we think they're fair ones. That's the image of the area we just looked at, where we're going to build a piece of real estate that will connect those two buildings. And those of you that are in the building know there's a number of level changes that happen in the building there. We can address all those level changes in the same place, and in addition, we'll put an elevator in there as well. So once somebody gets into the building now, they'll be safe and secure and capable of engaging any of that part of the side of the building by going through that one door, which we think will help quite a bit. And you can see how quickly that can have an impact on the perception of what it means to pull up to the school. The other side of the building, as I already stated, was a little bit more challenging because of all the grade. We're going to ignore this part on that. I mean, we're going to clean it up and organize it, but we're not going to be as aggressive on the part you can see right here. We'll do that a little bit further up the hill. That's where the retaining wall is that can be moved to make something more safe and secure happen. But in a similar fashion, we're going to create a new front door there that says, hey, this is another school that's attached on the other side of the building. We think doing things like that will give it the personality it needs to be something special for each group of students. Then there's other challenges here that we started to think about. This, for example, was originally the entry into the school happens right on the corner. It tells anybody that doesn't know that drives up to the school that it's the front door, but in reality it's not. And so we think we can do some things there to first take that notion away of it being the front door, but also at the same time to make it more safe. And so what we've done is we enclosed the courtyard there, and then we took the vestibule and actually enclosed it. So what happens now is there's a student breakout space just inside that door that can now go out onto the patio space. The only security point is that just to the side there where it abuts the building, you can see there'll be a gated component there. So it's kind of a tricky thing because there's a public bus stop there, and we want to secure it from that. So there'll be one way in, it can be carefully tended to, and we think we can make it secure so that you could have a breakout space so that students could take advantage of it from time to time. There's another view of it looking from above slightly, and you can see the stairs are gone. It still works because you can get over to the right side, but it will be much safer for students in the area. So here we're looking at an overview, and you can see that while I showed you the stuff from East St. Louis where we had done everything, you can do modest pieces of what you're doing to really have big impacts on the way the school looks and operates. So just in terms of working on those three areas right there, and then perhaps going into the courtyard and doing something special there as well, you can completely make the thing new and fresh and much more secure than it currently is. And I think that's thank you time. So please ask any questions you might have, and we'd love to talk to you about them.
Any questions? Mr. Davis?
Yes, ma'am. No, I'm excited to see this, and thank you for all your work. And I'm glad that you mentioned the part where you haven't really had the opportunity to engage with the school community. And I don't know if my question is for Mr. Watson or Ms. Williams, but I hope, and I wish Ms. Alhajeri was here because this would have, well, Raquan's here. Gosh, I forgot about you. So I wonder if when you talk to the school community, if there'll be some input or to ask them really how they feel about two separate entrances on two separate sides of the building. You know,
we presume nothing about that.
Okay.
We think there'll be an extensive public engagement, and it's not just students, it's students and faculty and community members and everybody that has a stake in this.
Yeah, and I just see it as there always needs to be opportunities for those two schools to sort of blend culturally because, you know, they were sort of put together during the pandemic, and have been through a lot together. And I would just love to see an architectural improvement that would help them with bringing those two schools together, because they've been separated in so many ways, and there's just such a great opportunity, I think, to bring the arts and the scientists together and do wonderful things. But I'll let Mr. Strickland, because he lives it, and I'll let him talk about his lived experience.
Good evening. That was one of my first questions, the divisions of the CVPA and CSMB entrances. My first question is, what made the decision for CSMB to be in the front of the school entrance and for CVPA to be at the back of the school entrance? Can I get that answer?
Perhaps I'm misunderstanding something, but I think they're on opposite sides of the building, but both are in the center.
Yes, but on the campus side, that's the main entrance. And on the Arsenal side, that's the back of the entrance. But both entrances are used by both schools. So one thing that I have a concern about is the division that one is CVPA and one is CSMB, when they both should be both CVPA and both CSMB, if that's understood.
I understand.
As he said, we have been through so much together, and we can't afford for anything to be divided. That's the first thing. My other question is about the bathroom stalls, and this might be a Dr. Watson question. As a young lady, I talked to many of the young ladies, and one of their concerns are the heights of the stalls. It is disruptive to their privacy. There are some young ladies that are a little taller than others, so their fear is that they can be seen from sitting down. And also one of the problems is some of the stalls don't have any doors on them. That's a problem and that's a concern. Also, I saw one of the pictures of the counseling suite. And I know that we fixed up many of the doors, and I know you said over 125 doors, and they're brilliant, and I love them. It's perfect. But as you walk into the counselor suite, if you look into the actual office doors, they're still the same doors, and we need to get those replaced, because I've actually heard them say that that is one of their concerns. So hopefully that you all can work with that. But besides that, it looks beautiful, truly it does. I'm about to graduate, but this has been a home for me for the past 4 years, and we put a lot of work into the fellowship and into the family that we've built there. So it looks like you all are going to do a great work, but please try to make sure that everything is as inclusive and as unified as it possibly can be. We do not want to see one CVPA, one CSMB. If we're going to share the building, we're going to share the building. And that's all I have to say.
There's a thing I'd like to add to your comment, though. You have such a great courtyard there. Not a small courtyard, a big one. I think there's a way to create an event that happens in there that is that place where everything mixes. So I think it's an opportunity we haven't explored yet. We will certainly look at that as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Jones?
I want to say thank you so much for your presentation. I sat over here and I've gone down memory lane with the high school renovations when you talked about East St. Louis High, because I did attend East St. Louis High. And I remember walking down the hallway when it was super crowded and you could hardly get through, and it wasn't light and beautiful like this picture here. It didn't look anything like that. And you guys look like you're going to do an amazing job. If you can transform East St. Louis Senior High from what it used to be back in the day, I'm looking forward to the new school. I'm going to ask you about the signage outside, and then I want to ask a question because I'm always asking about the media out the board to let people know what's going on inside the schools. And then I wanted to talk about solar energy, because I looked at when you show the view of the top of the schools, there's a lot of space there, and I want to know how you might utilize that, because those buildings do consume a lot of energy. Thank you.
Thank you. It was nice of you to share that about East St. Louis. And frankly, Teresa Saunders was the superintendent there, and she was a real smart woman. And she taught us a whole lot of things about how to make a building more secure. And a lot of it had to do with simple things that you might not have guessed, one of which was to make more entries into the building than you thought you needed. And the reason being that friction is often a thing that happens as a result of people bumping into each other. And so we put 7 doors in there and then divided the courtyard so a kid could get off the bus and go to one side of the building and another kid to the other, and then they didn't come in contact. And she applied that thought process to a lot of how we thought about things in the building, and I think to good effect. So we learned a whole lot there, and hopefully we can put some of that to work for you.
Did a great job.
Thank you very much. The solar question is really a straightforward thing to do. We'll have to assess to make sure that the roof and the structure of the roofs are adequate to manage that load. But we're putting them everywhere on buildings at this point simply because the technology is reasonable and proven and also reasonably priced. So we will do that to whatever degree the building will support it. And frankly, everything green, architects as a group are very sustainably minded. That's just how we think. We do a lot of buildings that are LEED certified buildings, but we know that administratively there's a lot of cost that goes into managing the LEED process, and often that money can be put back into the school and you can have many of the same benefits without having spent it. So we're going to assess the entire building and subsequent buildings in that regard, so that even as it relates to landscaping, we're putting things in that are the kinds of plants that should be local and not stuff that are hard to maintain.
And the signage?
The signage is a completely negotiable thing at this point, and again, we sort of, that was a stab that many of us took at getting something, because a lot of times people just have a hard time of envisioning what could be done. So we put a couple of those ideas together just to start building some excitement about it.
I'm asking because whenever you pass by our school buildings, a lot of them you don't know what's going on inside.
Right.
And I just wanted to know if there would be something to help the school shine so people can find out, oh, they're going to have a performance tonight, or they're honoring a teacher or a student or something.
We agree.
Like that.
It's a great opportunity. We have a long-standing relationship with a firm locally called In Graphics, and they do all kinds of signage and displays and things of that nature all over the city. And frankly, you know, if you've gone to the zoo or any place like that, a lot of that is their work. So there may be others that are more well-suited to doing some of that work based upon your community and the resources that we have here. So we'll look at all that and then pick somebody that will do the right work that we need to get done. Thank you.
Ms. Sadie?
Thank you very much for this presentation. It looks wonderful, and just from being in both of those spaces and seeing the disparities and differences between the two, I'm excited about this this model, and making sure that when you walk into each of these buildings, you feel like they both have the resources that our students deserve. So I appreciate the presentation, and it looks great. I do want to ask about the timeline. I know you have the timeline listed here, but in terms of incorporating and hearing from community members and students, what does that timeline look like? Getting those voices to make sure that we are incorporating what they have to say.
We're actually going to have a conversation about some of these things tomorrow morning because we're itchy. We would like to start moving forward right now, and so part of that will be a communication thing that we have to work out, but as soon as we're able to is the answer. Maybe he has something else.
So currently what we've been doing is we've been working with the school leaders, school administrators. So we have a committee that we're putting together. It also entails some of our students so we can hear their voices, and then we'll extend to the community. So this is just the first steps. A lot of the conversations, what you saw, were just some internal thoughts, just on conversations, survey results, just a lot of information that we received up to this point. But the plan is that we're going to make sure that we get and hear all of the student voices, staff voices, as well as the community.
Mr. Watson, I just want to commend you because it's not often that you all see Ms. Jones smile and say that she was happy about something. So kudos to you and the team that you've identified. If there is no other questions, thank you. Dr. Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We deeply appreciate your presentation. I'm going to invite our Deputy Superintendent of Academics, Dr. Smith Jr., and our Director of Special Education, Mrs. Candace Boyd, to share just a special education update. Where are we? And just to provide an overview of our work with our special education students.
All right, good evening, Interim Superintendent Williams, Board, SLPS staff, community, scholars. And so I want to begin first by saying Happy National Teacher Appreciation Week, and I'm going to share a different take on an adage that we say, those who can do, those who can do more teach, right? And so I have the pleasure and privilege of leading and supporting our academic office division with other leaders, and I'll be able to share with you or introduce two of them tonight. And so you'll hear from Candace Boyd, our Director of Special Education, and we'll talk a little bit about just the systems, the structures, the processes that we put in place to really create the conditions to really move the work forward for a population that is oftentimes overlooked, right? And so what are we doing specifically in SLPS to address the real challenges and realities of special education? And then I'll have an opportunity to come back a little bit later to talk with you and share with you the work from another leader in our academic office. And so with that, I'll turn it over to our Director of Special Education, Candace Boyd.
Good evening. Our agenda for the evening, what is special education for SLPS, special education services that the district provides, our enrollment, our K-12 placements, strengths, areas of growth, next steps, and questions. The Office of Special Education is a department within St. Louis Public Schools. The district is the city's LEA, so we have those responsibilities to provide FAPE to our city residents that are of ages 3 through 21 years of age. The goal is to improve outcomes for children and to ensure that services are fair, equitable, and highly qualified for services and for educational outcomes. Our students range from a variety of different needs, and again, it is the charge of our department to partner with our families and our stakeholders to make sure those services are provided. Federal laws govern what we do and how we do to make sure that services are provided to our students. The Office of Special Education provides an assortment of special education services and supports and programs to meet the requirements of least restrictive options for our students, least restrictive environments, excuse me. The services and supports for the students may vary in a variety of different ways, hence why you have IEP meetings to talk about what students' needs are, getting parents' input, general education teachers, and stakeholders, making sure that you put together services that make sense and that support our students. So here's a list of just some of the services that we provide in the city. So for our early childhood programs, again, we have child find obligations. So for our P3, P4 city residents, we are obligated to provide those services in terms of evaluations. We provide special education services throughout our buildings, either self-contained resource or collaborative teaching models. We have 3 special education buildings within the district where the students receive services in environments where all of the students have IEPs. So that's going to be your Gateway Michael, your ETS in Madison, and your Nottingham CAJT High School. We provide services, private separate day services. So when IEP teams determine that students' educational needs are best met in other settings, we partner with the following vendors to make sure those services are provided. So that's going to be JTC Academy, Logos, and Great Circle, formerly Great Circle, which is now known as KVC Missouri. Our related services provide speech, OT, PT, school examiners, school psychologists, music therapists, LPNs as needed for students who have acute medical needs. We are the LEA for our state schools, so that's Missouri School for the Blind, Missouri School for the Severely Disabled. Paraeducators at all levels, depending on what the needs are for students. Behavior therapists, transition services, community-based classrooms, autism services, ABA implementers, board-certified behavior analysts, hearing and vision services, interpreting sign language needs, non-public after-school programming, alternative education, juvenile detention centers. So again, we deploy resources to make sure our students with disabilities have IEPs, that we provide those services under those situations. St. Louis Justice Center. So again, if we have youngsters that are detained at the Justice Center, we then provide resources at the Justice Center. And then we have homebound services. So again, this is just a snapshot of our enrollment. So you can see that the biggest bar over here is going to be at our elementary levels, but we've broken it down with elementary, middle, and for high with their per placements. If you look at our placement breakdown again, you can see where we're identifying our early childhood, we're identifying our self-contained placements, private separate day, homebound. Again, public separate placements. Again, in the district, we have 3 of those locations. Our middle school, so again, we have broken down from our middle school placements. Those students are self-contained, those that are resource. And then high school, again, self-contained resource. And then top 3 challenges. So I would say top 3 challenges and successes. I want to start there if I could. So Spire Reading. Our teacher of the year for special education is Hillary Warren. She's a teacher at Malamphy. I had the opportunity to be in Ms. Warren's classroom and to see her roll the Spire curriculum out, this reading supplemental program, and it was just wonderful to see how the teachers, the paraeducators, and the students were really excited just regarding rolling out this reading curriculum or this reading program. So again, we're looking to expand on Spire with our more involved students. Learn to Earn, we have students from CJT. We have currently 15 students that are enrolled in this program where they're having the opportunity to earn money and to work on those job skills. Virtual services. So again, we've had to pivot to virtual services for speech and language and for psychs and behavior therapists, again, just due to challenges with our staffing. But again, we were successful in rolling those platforms out. I would say challenges that we're currently dealing with that really dominate a lot of our work will be staffing. So we have shortages in the area of speech and language, school examiners, and school psychologists. Another challenge that we've overcome was the closure of Annie Malone Therapeutic Academy. So we had to partner with our community vendor to place our students in their least restrictive environments, which meant that we had to partner with our parents, partner with the vendor, have conversations with our families to explain what was going on, and then hold those meetings to determine least restrictive options for our students. And our self-assessment with DESE. So what we're learning, again, just looking at and critiquing ourselves, right? Looking at where we have compliance challenges, how are we monitoring the services that we put in place, how are we giving reflective data, current data to our families. These are things that we continually need to work on and we struggle with. Steps to address some of our challenges. Is looking at staffing is that we are meeting with all of our approved vendors. We have 8 right now. So I began having conversations with our vendors in April just to talk about what our needs are in terms of teachers, paraeducators, school psychologists, school examiners, and right now they are aggressively working with us to find that talent. Annie Malone, again, was another challenge, just the sudden decision to close the school, and then for us to partner with an agency to hold those meetings to support our students and transitioning those students into other environments. And then our self-assessment with DESE. So again, working with the Department of Education regarding compliance and what that looks like in terms of our evaluations, in terms of IEP compliance and readiness. Lessons learned for next year. Professional development with practical application to be provided to all new and returning staff. So again, sometimes our teachers get frustrated when we stand before them every year and it's the same kind of conversation, but we have to have the conversation because we haven't gotten it right yet. So we still have to talk about IEP development, IEP implementation, and what that looks like. Progress monitoring, collaborating, developing from the building to central office level to do quality checks, quality assurance of IEP minutes and services. So again, things that we put in place, are we monitoring those things, having those conversations with our families and with school officials? Are there any questions?
Ms. Emily.
Sorry, I have a lot. Do we have these numbers broken out in terms of racial equity? I know that Black students getting sort of pushed into special education instead of having some time to grow in the general population is an issue nationwide. I would love to know how we're addressing that here. Also, I would love it if you would go through and explain all these terms because I felt like you were speaking a different language. And then, do we have numbers on how many students, parents, families have requested services or have been recommended for services and haven't gotten them yet? And I know that we don't have staff, but that's one of the things I hear about the most from parents is that their kids aren't getting what they need. And I mean, I am one of those parents. I've been waiting on a 504 for my daughter, and we're so close to the end of the year. She hasn't gotten it. It's going to be fine. But what can we do? How can we help you?
Okay.
Please.
So thank you. I appreciate that. So 504s don't reside in our office. That's in another office, so we can talk offline about that. So that is not in our office.
Who do they belong to?
We can have that conversation offline, Ms. Hubbard, if you like. We can do that.
Okay.
And connect you with that person. We can definitely do that.
I mean, I don't want different treatment, but that's very confusing. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Two, so the information, yes, you did request information regarding number of evaluations. I did not see your request regarding the ethnic background, so I don't have that piece. But again, if we're looking at our referral rates, yeah, we're going to refer more African American students, males. You're going to see that. So yeah, and that's more, I think, a national trend, unfortunately, but that's just the space that we're in right now. And then terminology and whatnot. So tell me what you'd like me to go back and review with you. Sure. So early childhood special education. So we have child find obligations. Oh, sure. So okay. So sure. So evaluations. So again, so when parents make a request, we look at that as a child find obligation, where we are bound to conduct evaluations to see if we, when the parent comes, do we suspect a disability? And if we suspect a disability, then we have 30 days to respond to that, get the parent's signature, permission for us to evaluate. If the parent gives us written permission for us to evaluate, then we have another 60 days to actually do that evaluation, hold the eligibility conference to determine, yes, the child qualified for services or the child did not qualify for services. If the child qualified for services, then we have another 30 days in which to hold the initial IEP meeting. So you're looking at a window of 120 days in order to possibly get that process going. But again, what you alluded to, Ms. Hubbard, is the staffing piece. That is a challenge.
I have a question. You say staffing piece, so are we looking at this being a new issue as a staffing piece or a long-term issue? Because I guess my question is, you're saying 30 days, 60 days, and then another 30 days. Mm-hmm. That's for the child to even go before the setting to get an IEP session, correct? Mm-hmm. Once they get their IEP, then they are provided or listed whatever services they may need based on the IEP, correct?
Correct.
So from that time, so we're hypothetically dealing with a student that's really having some behavior issues in the classroom, with the teacher, even at home or what have you. Walk me through what that looks like. You're saying initially a parent will come and say, hey, I'm having these issues based on these referrals that's coming from the teacher. We're having these issues, and they have to wait 30 days before they can even.
We look at the information that's submitted. So we're looking at all of the collective data, all those talking points. So you're looking at the suspension data if there's any, you're looking at anecdotal records, you're looking at together a picture of the child to see if we suspect a disability. If that is the case, then we then have a red meeting, have the parent come in and give us consent to evaluate, and then that's when we start.
I worked really closely with Ms. Boyd, and so this is the special education route if they do qualify, and so we also have additional resources that we put in place prior to. So what we're working on this year, I'm going to try to break this down. So as a school district, we focused on RTI, which was response to intervention. We're transitioning to what we call MTSS, right? That stands for multi-tiered systems of support. So prior to saying that you want to be evaluated for a special for special education, what are the other resources, interventions that you're putting in place, right? And so there is the official timeline that we follow for special education evaluation, but there's other strategies and resources that we're requiring that we put in place. We're working with teachers, we're working with school administrators to say, we've hired a new MTSS specialist this school year to be able to really focus on what are those foundational practices prior to getting to, I want to evaluate for special education, what else have you done initially to be able to support, right? And so the parent has the right, of course, to say, I would like to be evaluated. Our responsibility during that quote unquote waiting period is to make sure we have certain resources and supports in place. And so that's what we've been trying to focus on. What are those strategies outside of what would eventually be a part of an IEP as we're waiting during that timeline? And so it's not just a holding space where nothing's being provided. We're working on what are those resources that can happen in the classroom by the teacher, by an interventionist, by all of those other people prior to having a formal IEP.
Okay, so now let's get into this. This child has an IEP, and on average, I'm just curious. Do we know about how many IEPs that your office is kind of dealing with just for the first, just hypothetically within 6 months?
Well, looking at our enrollment, we're about 2,600 plus students. So these are all students who have IEPs that we've serviced throughout the entire city.
And out of the 2,000, they come up for, is it like a 6-month or a year review?
Annual, every year, yes, ma'am.
Annual review.
Yes, ma'am.
So where are we in providing them the annual review? Are we on the backlog of that as well because of staffing, or how are we able to meet the needs when that's needed? Or even say within that year, what if the child, whatever we've identified based on their IEP, what their needs are, we're seeing that assessment really didn't, is not there. There needs to be a reassessment within 6 months. Like, how does that process work? And I'm asking this because this is often what I'm hearing parents have concerns about. I've asked for an IEP. I don't get an IEP. I've had an IEP. They haven't been evaluated. I mean, it sounds like what Ms. Hubbard is saying, it may not be an actual IEP, but some of them have asked for IEPs or gotten IEPs, and they've been waiting a year or 2 years down the road to even receive it. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of what that pattern looks like and how can we, like Emily saying, like work to kind of tighten it up. I know we keep saying staffing, but we can't keep using that as our, challenge. We got to come up with other creative ways to address those challenges, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. So IEPs are annual documents. However, parents can ask at any given moment to reconvene the team to review those services, right? Right now, we are dealing with ILAs, and they are not allowed to write IEPs. So right now, we're working with our certified staff to cover that. So you're going to have some challenges because they're trying to cover their current caseload plus cover the caseload of an ILA. So that is a true challenge. But again, a parent can ask, reconvene in any given moment to have those conversations. Let's say a child does need something more restrictive. Again, we're looking at data suspension, we're looking at the interventions to see what services and supports are needed. So that is afforded to families. But again, I know you all don't want to hear staffing, but I'm sorry, but it's just the truth. So we need credentialed individuals to do these evaluations.
So I'm hearing the part you're saying on the, is it IE?
The IEP?
No.
The ILAs. I'm sorry, the ILAs.
Yeah, I know y'all come up with
Okay,
these.
sorry.
But the ILAs,
Yep.
how are we working to get them certified? I think that's where I think that will kind of solve a lot of the problems that we're seeing that's coming before us. If we can get them certified, because some of them have been in that position for a year, 2 years, or what have you, and they're willing. I'm just curious to become certified. What steps are we taking to work with them to get them certified?
So I won't be able to speak to that. We may have to have human resources kind of speak to the different pipelines that they have to kind of get individuals credentialed. But I do know internally what we're doing. We work with the ILAs to collect data. So since they can't write IEPs, they can collect data. They can look at work samples, anecdotal information to help the certified individual write those IEP documents.
I'm going to invite our Chief Human Resources Officer, Mr. Burton, Charles Burton, to address that question, President Cousins.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Sure. Good evening. And so this is the first full year of ILAs. Like we piloted last year like 12 or so, maybe 20 people. This is the first year we've kind of expanded that. And part of the plan was to assess, and that was part of the work of the St. Louis plan too, to assess how well those people perform in those roles, and then to plug them to our Grow Your Own programs, which, as you know, we have multiples of those, including with UMSL, with St. Louis U, with WashU and the residency program, with Lincoln University this year, and so we've identified them. Principals are assessing them and telling us whether or not that works out. This person's a good candidate or not. I think this year we've already plugged some into, it's on staffing call this morning, so already plugged some of them into our Grow Your Own programs where they can become certificated, but we haven't completed that process yet. But
So
yes, that's in the works.
So I'm curious, with that, have we seen with these letters, the ILAs in regards to the special, the SPED program, are we seeing them have an interest in becoming certified?
Yes, and so some of them, yes, some of those ILAs were formerly instructional grades, so they support people in special ed. And the program that we've developed or started this year with Lincoln is specifically for paras, our non-certificated staff who will attend classes online and then become certified teachers. In fact, on Thursday nights, they have a tutoring session where they come down in the HR conference room. We get support.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I had a few questions. I do want to talk a little bit more about staffing, just so I kind of understand the challenges a little bit more. I think you had mentioned that there's 8 vendors, and are those vendors that provide staff to provide
Correct.
services?
Correct.
And is 8 normally what we have, or have we increased to 8 because of the staffing challenges?
That is correct. We increased. We normally don't have 8, but we felt the need to increase to 8 vendors to help our needs.
And do you know approximately how many positions that they're able to fill?
So it really depends on what the needs are, and then their own recruiting efforts, because they're supporting other districts as well. So again, that's why I started having conversation with all the vendors in April to talk about what our needs are, so they can start sourcing help for us.
And so, because I've come across this just with some parent emails before. Could you talk a little bit about sort of the challenge of having vendors with communication with staff in terms of, and parents? I mean, have you had some difficulties with the vendors and communicating with parents, and maybe some confusion between the vendor and the staff and the parent?
I think we've had a few hiccups, Ms. Davis, in terms of contractual staff knowing how to engage, or just getting their schedule up and going, and when to communicate with families. But we're working with those one-offs. We make sure that when we have related service providers that are contracted, they're virtual, that we make sure we have an in-person mentor that can help them navigate that communication piece with families.
So the in-person mentor is a school-based staff member?
Yes. We do have a few that are contract, but they're in person. So yeah, it could kind of vary quite honestly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So this is, if I can ask this question right, this has always been sort of a mystery to me how this works. So I enroll my student at a school, and that school, either through the child find process, and I have some more questions about that too, or they come in with an IEP, or however we request an IEP. That IEP identifies that they need a specific service, but that school may be a very low enrolled school, doesn't have a lot of staff, maybe doesn't have a lot of other kids with the same issue. How do you, and so you don't have a staff person who qualified to provide that service. What do you do in that situation? First of all, is that a problem? Because it seems like it is to me. Am I imagining this, or is that an issue? And if it is, how do you deal with that?
So the only example I can think of is if we have a child who transfers in, has an IEP already, and let's say the child is transferring in and they came from a self-contained, meaning receive all their special education services in one small setting by a SPED teacher, all, and it could be autism. Right now, we don't have autism classrooms in every building. So when a child does report to a building, and let's say the child IEP does reflect self-contained AU, then we've got to look to see how we can best service that child in another site. Because again, we don't have autism self-contained classrooms in every building.
And so that's a good example, because I think that's one of the things I was thinking of.
Yeah.
So I guess again, the timing of that, how quickly does that timing happen? You know, does a kid who needs to be in an autism classroom have to wait a year to get to a different school, or is that something that you're able to sort of nimbly say, hey, this becomes a priority, we need to get you to a different location and
So
have
it
that
does
conversation?
become a priority. So it won't take a year to get that child to that location. So if the child, again, go into that example, child is already transferring into our system, already has an IEP, already has been identified, IEP was implemented, was being provided in a special education setting where students have the same diagnosis. Again, we are notified, the office notified, the school notifies us, or the family, and then we have that collective conversation to say, hey, does this child need this, or can the child handle that? So it's more of a conversation with families. When they come, they present the document upon enrollment, school officials, principals will then reach out to us, and then we will problem solve that.
So I guess in the other situation, if a student comes, doesn't have the pre-existing IEP,
Right.
but the staff, you know, through the child find thinks, this kid needs to be tested, but then they may be delayed because of testing delays because of staffing issues. Is that
So that could be an example, yes.
okay?
Yes, that could be because of staffing shortages, yes.
And in terms of staffing shortages, I know it's a problem. I know speech-language pathologists are a nationwide problem. There's not enough people going into those programs. But in terms of our specific staffing challenges, have you been able to identify specifically SLPS specific issues? And I'm going to ask you then sort of special school district and competition.
So, yes, we do have shortages for speech-language pathologists, school examiners, school psychologists. Salary is an issue, so individuals will blatantly say that, or the terrain they have to cover, right? So, at one time when we had school psychologists, school examiners, we would bundle them up. Let's say we had a full-time person, and they would get 4 or 5 schools. Well, we're now in the space now where we can't do that. We now have to kind of centralize the process when we are working with our evaluation requests. And then there's also, Ms. Davis, the platform of virtual learning. So, that has kind of taken some legs, and individuals really are looking for that option of working virtually.
The staff members are looking for a virtual option.
Correct.
Is that something we're able to accommodate?
We are doing it now, yes.
Okay.
We're doing it now with our contract staff.
Okay.
When
But
we
not for staff that were hired, they don't have the virtual option.
Where we're looking at our in-person staff being in person, but they may have to provide services virtually to a school. So let's say you're at Hodgen, but you're then providing virtual services to Compton Drew.
Gotcha. So they can stay at their desks, they don't have to drive around town.
We are looking to do that in some of our instances, yes. When we don't have full-time clinicians in the district, yes.
This might be a question for Dr. Smith Jr. You talked about the MTSS, and I've seen that in your presentations, and I think this is probably the first time that I've kind of had an explanation. Do we communicate that to parents about the MTSS? And again, it's kind of an acronym, so it gets confusing.
Sure.
But is it explained in a way that you've got the different tiers, and so if a child is going to be receiving tier 1 and maybe need to go to tier 2 or tier 3, and I don't know if I'm explaining this right, do we have a process where that's sort of communicated? I mean, I think that'd be reassuring for parents to know that, okay, there's a delay, there's staffing issues, there's time constraints, all of these things, but in the meantime, this is what's working for your child.
No, sure, Mr. Davis. And so we are in the very first year of switching to that multi-tiered systems of support. So we're doing a lot of internal work just to ensure that our staff really understands what does it mean across all of our curricular resources for level 1. So tier 1, foundational, that means everyone receives this type of support. Tier 2 is our targeted support. So we could be focusing on English language learners. We could be focusing on special ed. We could be focusing on something in that particular targeted area. And then tier 3 is our comprehensive. So we're looking at behavioral supports, we're looking at academic supports. So if I'm answering your question directly, it is internal conversations to level set everyone in the district first, and then being able to communicate that out to our families.
So if I understand, so first we have to train staff, and that's ILAs, BLAs, certified teachers, ISS monitors, assistant principals, everybody who comes in contact with a student during the day I guess, first to identify what tier they would be in. Is that how it works?
Well, I would say what we're doing right now is trying to ensure that we provide a menu of supports for staff members so that the first response isn't this particular scholar needs to be evaluated for special education, right? So we're looking at how do we scale back and say, what additional data do you have? What other interventions, what other supports have you put in place? And we're working with our MTSS specialist now who's carving all of that out in all of our curriculum plans. And so, wow, we see that you're struggling in mathematics. I think they need to be tested for an IEP. Let's scale back first. Have you tried these tier 1 supports and resources? Okay, if you have, let's collect that data. They haven't made any progress. Now let's take a look at the tier 2 supports that are a little bit more aggressive. And then by the time we have that, now we have the data to say, yes, they're not making any progress. And so maybe the evaluation for special education makes sense in this space, but we haven't had that true structure in place where it was system-wide, where we're putting those practices in place. And so we're at the infancy stage just of MTSS collective understanding around that.
So the MTSS specialists, are those new standalone positions, or are those existing staff members who like get an extra, thing on their shoulder, like I'm also the MTS specialist?
No, I appreciate that. And so it's singular at central office. And so we have an MTSS specialist, one person that was hired this particular school year. That person was a former academic instructional coach in a school building, has deep expertise and knowledge of SLPS. And now we're leveraging that particular person and their skill set to create the framework for MTSS.
I got it. So infancy, it's like real infancy.
So this is like Similac.
Maybe
Like we're drinking Similac.
Maybe it hasn't even been born yet.
Yes.
Okay.
But we're making some great strides because if you take a look at the academic office newsletter that comes out twice a month, there is an MTSS corner every time that it comes out talking about this is what it means, this is the shift that we're making, this is how we're applying to all of our standards-based curriculum plans. And so it's been very intentional around creating awareness, and then the next step is going to be how do we now apply that across all of our different departments.
So will that start out in professional development for the next school year?
Yes, and so we have that scheduled for July Summer Leadership Institute, the final 2 weeks in July.
So at this time next year, you may possibly have some more data about that. In terms of, who in the building is the MTSS leader?
I would say that I don't know if we're going to move to, ideally, we would love to have an MTSS department. So I'm going to put that plug out there right now, like eventually to grow, that we have someone in a building who understands this, and they're working with the AIC. They're working with school leadership teams to be able to create the specific plan based on their building, based on the district-wide resources. But next year, we'll have baseline data, and we'll be able to bring that back to the team.
Okay, thank you. I'll stop.
Can't come back. Because I'm hearing what you're saying. Now, I'm a parent.
Sure.
And what you're saying is not helping me as a parent or as a teacher to say, what am I doing now while this is at the Similac stage? So I think my question on the MTSS, and I think what I'm hearing and where it seems like we're missing is we're trying to, or we should, prior to the IEP stage, you see a child having some challenges or what have you in the classroom. Why aren't we working with student services who bring in these different organizations, provide behavior modification, have them introduce like what this MTSS person is trying to study, what that looks like and how that be. I mean, this is something that we should really be seeking out long before this. Like, we should be working with organizations, all these contracts that I keep looking at on social services, through student services with social service organizations that provide services just like what you're speaking of. Why aren't we working and bringing that level of communication into this space to have those conversations to say, hey, this is going on at this school because of the staffing issue with special education or what have you. This is where we are. Let's identify what organizations kind of can meet the needs that we're trying to get addressed. And some of this stuff, let's be honest, is really behavior modification. Just sitting down saying, hey, Johnny, pretty much, guys, let's be honest, stop eating these potato chips, these hot fries, whatever, whatever. Let's introduce something different into your diet. Let's look at something different to get your mindset, you know, different. All of that, when we keep talking about behavior modification, conflict resolution, like all of these are factors that I'm not expecting special ed to do, and I'm not expecting the teachers or you all to do. But that's where I think we need to be working in alignment with our student services in identifying those type of agencies that can come in and lend that level of support that we don't have.
Sure.
Like, I think that's where I'm kind of stuck on. It sounds like we're now creating a position, an MTS position, for them to get a understanding, kind of figure it out. That's going to take about a year. After they get that figured out, the next year, then they're going to do professional development to train others. That's going to take 2 years. All the while, Johnny is off the chain. Like, and mom is at her wit's end, dad is at his wit's end. Like, we got to come up with something better than what we're coming up with. And I'm not coming at you guys. I'm just saying overall, we have to openly hear from what I'm hearing, these are the steps and measures that I don't think we're putting in alignment with each other in order to combat the challenges. I kind of think if we do that, a lot of the SPED issues that we're hearing right now, not that many, but enough, will kind of help, like spur up the time of the staff that you do have to be able to address the needs of the students that really need the help that they need.
No,
So
sure.
that's my soapbox.
No, I do appreciate you sharing that, but I want to be very clear so that everyone who is listening is we are engaged in those conversations with the Office of Student Support Services.
Okay.
In the academic office, we have a school culture and climate specialist as well, so all of those conversations are taking place. The MTSS specialist position this year is really looking at our standards-based curriculum plans and putting all of those resources in the actual plans that teachers use so that when they're teaching math, when they're teaching social studies, when they're teaching English, they have those resources, those interventions in place so that they can say, oh, well, here is something that I didn't think of that I can try that can possibly be an intervention. Oh, that didn't work. Let me try this other resource in this space. So all of that's happening. So when I said we're in like the Similac infancy stage, we are in creating district-wide awareness. But in addition to that, simultaneously, we're applying those resources. We're putting it into our curriculum plans. We're talking with school culture and climate specialists. We're talking with the Office of Student Support Services to try to create this wraparound support process.
And I'm glad that, and I think that kind of goes to what Mr. Davis was asking. If that is the case, which I truly believe it is the case, how are we promoting that to our parents, and community to know that, I'm not even talking about the MTS piece, but even, and you may not even be able to speak on that, but how are we assuring our parents that, until we're able to get this, these are the different organizations that we have out here. This is what, for this particular school, or even the principal, because the principal may not know that these services is out here. Like, that's the part I'm saying. We probably know it internally, but we have to make sure we're doing our due diligence to get that information externally so the people that really need it get it. And it's not you, but this is the thing that I got to make sure we got to understand. Please, we cannot always rely on our website as our only source to be able to get that information out there, because a lot of them aren't looking at that. That's just the district as a whole. We need to make sure we're disseminating that information if it's going through individual schools into the community, however we need to get it out there. But these parents are struggling with trying to find, the necessary resources to help them and their families. That's all I'm saying.
Point taken. Got it.
Any more questions for Ms. I'm sorry, I kind of monopolized. Matt took over first, and it was me, but Ms. Jones.
Okay. Is there a document that describes how a student might qualify for the special education services?
So there is a flow chart, Ms. Jones, that identifies the steps to go through the evaluation process. There's also a guide to special education for families, and is more of a dictionary, if you will, or a glossary to talk about the different disabilities. So that information is available, and we can send it to you.
Okay, no, I guess I'm asking, do the parents receive this if a teacher or someone or a staff person recommends their child for special education services?
So the parents, it's on DESI's website. I mean, in our office, we printed hard copies out. So if parents come to our office, at our resource table, there is a parent's guide to special education, procedures, safeguards, and Bill of Rights. So that information is available in hard copy print in our office.
Okay, so if a parent, and I'm asking as a past parent of a child that was in special ed, and it sent me through tears a lot because I wanted to pull him out once I got in there, and it was over 20 years ago, so that was a minute. And I wanted to get him out because I didn't feel like he got all the services that he needed, and I was one of those parents that stood behind the door and peeped in the classroom, all of that. Because I was really worried, and I was concerned about the vendor that SLPS had, and that this vendor actually offered to place my child on drugs to calm him down, which was something that he didn't need, which angered me a lot. And I wanted to take him out the program, but I found it very difficult. Everybody acted like they didn't know what I was talking about. So I want to know when a parent comes and says, get my child out of this program, how do you do it?
So when you say get my child out of this program, do you mean revocation of consent? So let's say
Yes.
the child is found eligible, child has been evaluated, child has been found eligible, services have started, and then the parent says, you know what, I want to stop all services. Is that it?
Yes.
So that's called revocation of consent. So if a parent wants to terminate any and all special education services, we ask parents to fill out, they will need to sign a prior written notice saying they want to terminate any and all spared services. They don't pick, okay, I want to keep speech, I want to keep OT. When you say you want revocation, you want services to end, you terminate all services. We also ask parents to give us a hand document, a written document saying they want to terminate services. Those things are then uploaded to the child's band and SIS. We do our piece on the back end, and then services terminate. We want parents to really think about this, and I try to explain to parents that if you employ this, if you want to do this, that if you want to go through the evaluation process again, we have to start all over again. So I really want parents to think about when they want revocation of consent, because all the IEP protections and supports will then wipe out if you say you want to revocate services. So it's called revocation of consent.
Okay. So are the students still segregated from the other students if you're in special ed classes, or do they do the pull-out now?
So we have self-contained, so that means a student can be in a classroom all day long with a sped teacher. We have collaborative teaching, so that means a gen ed teacher and a sped teacher are teaching together, or you can have students who have minimal minutes. They may be pulled out of their regular ed classroom into a sped classroom to receive service. It just depends on how the services are written in the IEP.
I noticed that on this, you described up to age 21 that a student might qualify. So if you've already graduated or maybe not graduated, how does that work? I see St. Louis City Justice Center and the Juvenile Detention Center, and I'm imagining that we would have students or someone in that group that would be close to 21.
So it varies. I mean, some at Nottingham High School, we have students who may be that age, and once the child reaches their 21st birthday, that's when services for us would end, right? Because they're at that point. At the Justice Center, it just really depends when a child gets to, I believe it's age 17. If they move over to the adult side, then we stop. But if they're still detained at the Justice Center, we then provide a person who goes into the Justice Center to service them. We also have a full-time teacher assigned to Griscom. So at our Juvenile Detention Center, we provide services there.
For special ed?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my question is, are we actually able to get student services in 120 days? I know that's what we say. Are we actually able to do this?
So we try really, really hard, Ms. Hubbard, to do that. Again, the staffing challenges, and I know it's like a broken record, but that's just the truth. It really is an issue. So we really do try to honor that timeline, get the requests in, and work with our families to do it. But again, that is something that we're working against, and we're trying to deal with that. We are trying.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Director Boyd and Deputy Superintendent Smith Jr. for a very thoughtful, intentional presentation, very informative. I'm going to ask Deputy Smith Jr. to come to the podium, as well as Dr. Ala Gonzalez del Castillo. We will continue our presentations this evening with just an overview of our English language learner program. We serve about 50 languages here in the St. Louis Public Schools, and so it's really important to hear the intentional work that's happening in this department. Thank you.
All right, once again, I'm Dr. Marion Smith Jr., Deputy Superintendent of Academics. As I shared at the onset, you'll hear from two directors in the Academic Office Division. We talked about special education with Candace Boyd, and now you'll have an opportunity to hear about our English language learners from our director, Dr. Ala Gonzalez del Castillo. And one of the things we always like to talk about is there's a large percentage of scholars that identify and qualify for ELL services. And we always like to say that these are general education students first, right? Unless they qualify for an IEP. And so you'll hear from Dr. Gonzalez some overview information to level set, and then to talk about some of the touch points and the data that we're tracking to provide the resources to all of our English language learners. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Ala Gonzalez del Castillo.
Thank you and good evening. During our time together, we will look at several data points related to our English language learners, or ELLs. We will start off with our current ELL enrollment. We will look at our enrollment trends. We will also discuss instructional supports for our ELL scholars. We will look at their growth. We will also talk about our new addition for family supports, which is our ELL Family Media Center. And we will finish our conversation with a few points around language access or meaningful communication with ELL families. So I want to highlight that as of April 2023, our district is enrolling over 2,530 English language learners. And that is about 15% of our K-12 district population. I do want to point out that that number continuously changes, and it's increasing every single day as we enroll new students on a rolling basis. So on the left side of the screen, you will notice that we have a breakdown by different categories of English language learners. So the category that I want to point your attention to is what's called RCV, or receiving services. That is the highest number of English language learners for our district. That is over 2,000 English language learners. And those are the scholars who need direct support for language development so that they can do two things while they're here with us: develop language and acquire content across all disciplines. So for us, over 80% of our English language learners in the district require that additional, very intentional language development support. So here we'll see our enrollment trend, and the slide shows data for the last 9 years of ELL enrollment that we report as of the last Wednesday of September. That is when we report enrollment numbers to Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I want to point your attention to the last 2 years, so you will notice that when we compare our ELL enrollment for this school year to last school year, you will notice that increase in our English language learners in the district. What's important to point out is that, again, going back to the notion of enrolling our English language learners on a rolling basis. So our ELLs start the school year at any given point during the school year. So there are students who start the school year in October and in November and February and April and May. And why is this point very important is because collectively, this school year, so after the beginning of school year on August 22nd, 2022, we have enrolled over 630 new English language learners to our district. So if we think about it this way, so counting the number of school days that we have been in session this year and this number of English language learners new to the district, that is on average 4 new English language learners enrolled to our district every single day that the school has been in session. So certainly that is a highlight for us because that is a growing population in the district. We also want to be mindful that impacts some of our schools and some more than others. And I think it's important to point out that our newcomer centers have been impacted the most. So our NCNAA K-8 campus and NCNAA 910 newcomer program. Also on this slide, I wanted to point out to you a couple of, so we have enrolled new students who represent over 40 different countries. But I've noticed the ones that are on the top of this list with the highest number of students from those countries. So Honduras is our top country that we enroll new students from this year. It is important to notice that every year the top country changes. And it is also important to notice that when we talk about our refugees who are joining our district, just from this list, that will be Afghanistan and Congo, or DRC, which is Democratic Republic of Congo. So there are multiple ways to look at some of this data on this slide, but really the most important thing that I want you to remember from here is that we're really proud of our increased enrollment of English language learners. So now let's look at instructional supports that we have in place to support our ELL scholar growth. So 3 things are important here. Number 1 is our high impact ELL practices that we have identified so that our teachers, ELL teachers and classroom and content teachers use to ensure that our English language learners have access and are able to achieve in our classrooms mastering both language and content. So these practices include content and language objectives, identifying those for each lesson, focusing on linguistic supports, so providing some supports that will allow our students to practice language as they are practicing content, and peer interaction. So that is a huge component for ELL success. Our students need to have multiple opportunities to interact with their peers and adults and have linguistic supports while doing that. Here's a term that I wanted to share with you. It's SIOP. It stands for Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. So it's an instructional approach that focuses on 8 components. It also includes 40 practices that is research-based and is good for every scholar who is developing their academic language, and it is critical for ELL success. So we continue to focus our efforts on getting more and more of our district teachers trained in this approach so that our teachers are building that capacity to serve our English language learners. So here I wanted to share with you that 38 educators joined as SIOP trained educators our district this year. So they have gone through the training and completed it, and we have 15 teachers who are in the process now. Co-teaching is another instructional model that we use to support English language learners. It is the most appropriate for English language learners who are at the intermediate stage of language proficiency. So to serve our intermediate English language learners, we use co-teaching when the ESOL teacher is partnering with a classroom or a content teacher, and they work together through the whole instructional cycle. So they plan together, they instruct together, they assess together, they reflect together, and they engage in that again. So to support our teachers in the district as they are learning to co-teach for ELL success, we have developed and implemented this year co-teaching training pathways. It is really an opportunity for our ELL and content teachers to select the level where they would like to start with co-teaching. So select their co-teaching journey. Each of these levels prepares them to be successful in helping English language learners through co-teaching. And you have a couple of data points as far as the number of partnerships that have been trained this year at level 1, so 43 new partnerships have been trained. We also have 56 teachers who are at level 2, 2 partnerships at level 3, and 3 educators at level 4. So this also is an opportunity for our teachers to continue their co-teaching journey as they potentially explore a higher co-teaching level to engage in and continue to refine their co-teaching practices. And then a couple of data points regarding our ESO office supports for ELL teachers and classroom and content teachers with English language learners. So we are providing targeted feedback to our teachers as far as high-impact ELL practices, as well as linguistic supports that they're providing through walkthroughs, coaching cycles, coaching conversations, as well as other supports. So I think, so just important to notice why we are distinguishing coaching cycles and coaching conversations as 2 different points. So we see coaching cycles as a way to engage with a teacher sort of 3 times, to plan instruction together and support the teacher through that process, to observe instruction, and then to reflect on the instructional practice. Whereas sometimes it is not possible to have all 3 regarding the same instructional model or moment. So therefore, we are also looking at having coaching conversations that support maybe just the planning or the reflective piece. Either way, it is really important for our teachers to have a thought partner to engage with while they're planning instruction or reflecting on their teaching. So as you may know, there are in Transformation 4.0, our goal 4 has 2 distinct goals that deal with English language learners. One of them is goal 5A that talks about progress in learning English, and goal 5B that deals with proficiency in English. So that we know how our English language learners and our schools are doing towards accomplishing these goals, we have several progress monitoring assessments that we administer throughout the year. So these assessments or assessment tasks allow us to know student growth throughout the school year and allow us to adapt instruction to meet student needs. So a couple of points about these assessments. They focus on speaking and writing. So there are 4 main language skills, which is speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Based on our student data, speaking and writing are the 2 skills that provide opportunities for us in terms of student growth. Therefore, this progress monitoring assessment is really looking at these 2 skills. And we scored using a WIDA rubric, which is World-Class Instructional Design and Assessment. That is the entity that is also guiding our standards for English language development. So it's important for us for this assessment to be aligned to the standards that guide English language development. So a couple of ways we use this assessment. One of them is students use this data. They use that to set their own goals and then progress monitor and reflect on their growth. Our teachers use that to support students during their goal setting, during their reflection, but they also use that data to inform the instruction. Here I have an example for you of one of our schools that shows the comparison or really student growth and percentage of students showing growth as we look at our progress monitoring 2 compared to progress monitoring 3. So we see that in this particular school, there is an overall score showing that almost 70% of students are showing progress. Yet that overall score is not enough for our teachers to know what to do instructionally. Therefore, we are also looking at the different language dimensions that are word level, sentence level, and discourse level. Looking at this data, it makes it possible for our teachers to identify where they should focus on. So in this top chart, you could see that word level would be the place where the least growth was happening. So that can inform the teacher as far as next steps. And the chart on the bottom of the screen, you see that sentence level is the area with the least growth. So again, that will inform the teacher regarding specific ways they can do to support student growth. There are 4 ELL initiatives that I wanted to share with you that we continue to focus on, and some of them are new to us this year. One of them is book packs for our new students. So every new ELL who we enroll to St. Louis Public Schools is also welcomed to the district with a backpack full of school supplies and a book pack. It is important for us to help our students create those literacy environments in schools and at home. So getting those book packs to our scholars allows them to have some reading material at home so that they can engage in literacy activities. So every single scholar, an ELL scholar that we enrolled this year, received a book pack. To continue to focus on our literacy for English language learners, we also implemented ELL Reading Club books and blankets. Every participating student is receiving a bin with 9 books and a blanket that they can use to create really just a welcoming reading space in their home, and they engage virtually with our teachers to do interactive read aloud, to engage in some language development activities around the books that they are reading. This is one of the initiatives where we are leveraging our learning from the pandemic, and we are leveraging technology and the fact that all of our scholars have a device that they can take home and engage with teachers after school. Our bilingual library is growing. This year we have added more than 800 books to our bilingual library. Currently, the library has books in 10 different languages, and parents are welcome to come to the ESL office to check out those books and read them with their students at home. Or we also do library subscription services that allow parents who may not have a chance to come to the office to get the books to still receive the books through their child's school. And the last but not least on this slide is really a point of pride for us. We continue to work on celebrating our scholars who are demonstrating biliteracy. So this year, with the Seal of Biliteracy, we have 9 scholars who are in the process and are going to be awarded. Hopefully, 2 of them are still working on the test scores with those awards. So a Seal of Biliteracy is an award that is used to acknowledge our graduating seniors who are able to demonstrate proficiency in English and in at least one other world's language. It is available to English language learners and native English speakers. So we're really proud of those 9 scholars who have applied and are showing really biliteracy in more than one language. In addition to that, we also have 2 Pathway to Biliteracy awards. Those are awards to celebrate milestones for our transition grade levels. So our students in P4 moving to kindergarten, our 5th graders moving to 6th grade, our 8th graders moving to 9th grade, they too can demonstrate their efforts towards biliteracy, and we celebrate them with awards pathways to biliteracy. So this year we have over 440 pathways to biliteracy awards. So this year we were fortunate to add another support for our families, for our ELL families, and that is our ELL Family Media Center. It's a space that is located at the ESL office, and it allows families to access, learn, and engage with St. Louis Public Schools through technology. So when parents come to the ELL Family Media Center, they can access Microsoft Suite, they can access the internet, they can practice for the citizenship test or a driving test. Those are very popular things with our parents. They can also engage in a variety of classes that are specifically targeting ELL computer literacy, so for ELL parents. So you see here 8 topics that our computer literacy curriculum for parents addresses. Parents can engage in either a topic of their choice, or they can enroll in a 20-hour course that they can complete. The course can be offered in English and in 6 other languages based on the parent preference. We also offer mini sessions on some of the items that are very popular with parents and they need support. So email or support with Here Comes the Bus app or Class Dojo. Those are some of the very quick ways to support our families in connecting with us as a district through technology. And while parents are engaging in all of these activities, we also have a variety of choices and learning opportunities for our scholars. So you see that our scholars can either work with a variety of district-approved apps. They can also work with our ELL choice boards. These are activities that are focusing on the 4 language development skills. Our ELL teachers create a new choice board every week, so scholars who come to the ELL Media Center always have something new to learn. They can also work with Wonder Books or Playaways, and those are just technology-enhanced ways to access books. So it's sort of a new way of a book on tape, so that they can listen to the book, read the book. It can be a bilingual book or a book in English, whichever they prefer. And our younger learners can play with Osmo, which is a learning activity that focuses on literacy, math, and some of the coding skills as well. To ensure meaningful communication with our ELL families, in our district, it is important that we provide language access services. So translation and interpretation are among those services. As Dr. Williams has stated, our district is linguistically diverse. We speak collectively more than 50 different languages. And to ensure that we can provide that meaningful communication for every one of our ELL families, we have 2 different strategies. One of them is we are fortunate to have our district team of translators and interpreters. So you see our top languages listed on the slide, and that is Arabic, Dari, Farsi, French, Kinyarwanda, Pashto, Spanish, Swahili, and Vietnamese. And we have staff members who are district translators and interpreters to support our families. For our low incidence languages, so some of the languages that are not listed on the slide, we do partner with a vendor, which is BIAS, which is Bilingual International Assistance Services, who help us ensure that we can speak any world's language when our staff needs to interact with ELL families or when ELL families need to interact with district staff. As far as language development supports provided by our district translators and interpreters, I want to share 3 data points with you. So we'll look at those supports from the point of who initiated the service. So and on the slide, you can see that the majority of supports are provided to parents because they initiate that need for language access support. Over 8,000 cases of language access support have been provided from the beginning of school year to just this time in May. And then for our staff-initiated supports, we are almost at 6,000 cases. So that's when a teacher may reach out, a principal, a counselor, and so on. A few other very important language access services that I want to highlight for you today is translation of district documents and forms. So every time we send a document or a form home to parents, our language access team stands ready to translate that so our ELL families can fully participate and engage with the district. So far this year, the team has translated almost 200 documents and forms. The biggest project right now is the Code of Conduct. So that is keeping our language access team very busy. Robocalls, our automated district phone calls that are helping our district families to stay connected with the district, are very popular with ELL families. We hear it all the time from families that that is the way they prefer to get information from the district. So our team is recording those robocalls in multiple languages so that ELL families can understand our message. And then we have had 56 of robocalls recorded in multiple languages. And finally, positive phone calls. That was another learning opportunity we took from COVID. Really looking at a way to connect with our ELL families in a proactive way, to let them know what's happening in the district, to inform them about various opportunities to engage with us, to engage with their child's school, to engage in programs. So our language access team is making phone calls with the same talking points to ensure that regardless of which language group is receiving the phone call, the messaging is the same. So, so far this year, we have made over 3,400 positive phone calls. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address.
Any questions?
I have a question. I appreciate the data that you gave us about the enrollment. And I don't know if you can answer this question or if you have additional data about retaining these students. Because I wonder if there's any challenges in terms of, especially when we talk about enrolling in the new American academies, if we're able to retain those students and if we follow up with them to see if they stay in the district. And I guess the two-part question, and if you do have identified those challenges, are some of them district challenges or some of them maybe city challenges?
Thank you for this question. This year, almost 300 English language learners left the district, unfortunately. And for the most part, it is, I would say, city challenges, because our families move based off where they can afford housing and where they feel safe to stay. So while many families start their educational journey here with us in the city schools because they live in the city, once families get jobs and get on their feet, they often move, which that results in student movement as well.
Are there any city agencies that you work with in terms of helping families find housing, and not just, you know, temporary housing when they come in, especially if they come in as a refugee, but permanent placements to large enough, affordable, safe housing in neighborhoods, or is that just a sort of doesn't exist?
So the International Institute of St. Louis is the organization that is leading the charge with refugee resettlement. And they are the ones providing, finding initial housing and providing support to families with housing. Their support, unfortunately, lasts only 3 months for those initial resettlement benefits. So that's where we start seeing where we are really the only constant thing in the lives of our refugee families, because children start school here and they come to us with some of these questions and some of these needs. know if that answered your question.
No, I think it does. Thank you so much for that. And I think it's an opportunity. You know, the city always celebrates, you know, when refugees come into the city and to have that settlement through the International Institute. But we don't talk about the fact that so many of those families don't stay in the city because of the housing issues. And so because, you know, we are the only stable force for a lot of those families, I think it's incumbent on us to at least sort of beat that drum, especially when they're talking about equitable development in the city. It's just such a huge missed opportunity as we try to, you know, stabilize the population loss, not only in the district but also in the city, that we have this great opportunity for all of these new Americans coming in, but they can't stay in the city because there's just not affordable, safe housing for them. So thank you for that. I think we probably may lean into you a little bit more as we try to advocate for that with the city and the different city agencies, because it's just a huge sort of tragic lost opportunity, I think, for our whole community. So thanks.
Absolutely. And then another very important thing to consider here, our ELL families are often large, and we welcome them, we celebrate that, but it is very difficult to find housing that will be up to code when you talk about a family of 12 children and 2 adults.
Ms. Val.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I guess I would like to know a little bit more about the supports that are offered. I mean, as we know, not everyone comes here willingly. Some people have to leave their homes due to war or other traumatic issues. So are we working to provide supports for that? And because kids who already know English have difficulty learning when they're facing trauma at home or when they're escaping traumatic situations. And my other question is about our cultural responsiveness and our cultural competence. Are we choosing materials that are culturally relevant for these families, and are we keeping up, are our instructors keeping up with the current events happening in those countries, which is obviously still weighing on their minds, you know, if there is some sort of stressful factor. And we have to also keep in mind that not all of their family may have come over with them, so they still may have relatives who are facing difficult situations back at home. So can you tell me a little bit more about what we're doing as far as just being aware of the situations that our students are coming from and our families are coming from?
Thank you for your questions. So to address your first question around sort of supports, trauma-informed supports for our students, specifically considering the situations that they may be coming from, there are several ways that we have put in place some supports, really with partnership with our Student Support Services Department. So BIAS, the agency that I mentioned earlier, Bilingual International Assistance Services, in addition to providing language access supports, they also provide therapy to refugees and immigrants, and they are the leading provider in the area, really specializing in providing that type of support to families who are English language learners. So we partner with them in several of our district schools, have students who participate with those therapists during the school day to support them. And then your second question, so in the ESO office, we try to stay on top of all world events because we know that eventually will impact our ELL enrollment. And then looking and monitoring that, we also collaborate with the International Institute, with another agency in the area that is called the Mosaic Project that is operating under the sort of umbrella of the World Trade Center, to be able to stay informed, not only about the events that they may lead to resettlement, but also information about who may be coming, what are the languages, what are the cultural considerations that we need to take into account as we plan to welcome families from this or that part of the world. And then we take some of that information and share it with our ESOL teachers, who then are really leading that effort of sharing information in each of the buildings.
Thank you. So I guess the last part of my question is the materials that we choose, like you mentioned, the bilingual library. And I think that's a great idea. And I'm wondering how many of the original texts come from authors published in the countries where our students are coming from. Things that make them feel culturally connected, that they can read in their native language, as well as the new language that they're learning.
So I would say 50% of our collection we try to secure being originals. We are looking at text that is in the first language, as well as truly bilingual book that is in English and the student's first language. We incorporate our parents' input as we are developing our collection and growing it. And are working to develop new partnerships and relationships with some of the vendors that offer bilingual books. It is easier to secure bilingual books for some languages, such as Spanish and Arabic, and it is very hard to secure them for other languages. So Dari, Pashto, and Farsi have been challenging for us to secure, but we were fortunate to be able to add a lot of titles this year, which works really well because that is one of our top populations, new enrollments for this year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we are being culturally aware of the, making sure that these materials are of interest and culturally relevant, because not everyone, knows what it's like to have grown up American in St. Louis or the Midwest, and the more voices that we can have from multicultural perspective, I feel like we might have a little bit more engagement. So I appreciate the attention to that, and I do recognize your hurdles in finding some original source material from some of those more difficult languages. So I hope to see more of that, and I appreciate what you're doing. I also appreciate what the International Institute does and that we are partnering with them. So thank you very much. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Ms. Jones.
My question is about which schools have where your ELL students attend currently?
So almost all of our district schools have English language learners. I would say about 98% of our schools. However, 18 of our schools have a high number and a high percentage of English language learners. So we internally refer to those schools as ELL centers. There are 9 elementary ESL centers, 4 middle school, 3 high schools, and 1 newcomer program K-8 and 1 newcomer program 9-10.
Where are the newcomer programs located?
So newcomer program 9-10 is located at Roosevelt High School. And then newcomer program K-8 is located right where CSMB used to be in Wyman Building, which is right close to the ESO office.
I know that the district is really looking for more foreign language teachers because many of our high schools might not even have one. And I wanted to know, would other students have access to the phone or the translator that you have on the phone? Can any student in the district access that, or is it just for your ELL students?
So our translation services are really geared to support our ELL families because we have an obligation to ensure meaningful communication with our ELL families. So both our district translators and interpreters, as well as our telephonic interpretation services, are geared to support communication between an ELL family and a district staff member. So an ELL student, an ELL parent, and SLPS staff member.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
First, I want to start with personal thanks for all you do. We have many children in our church who attend the ELL services that y'all do. So I'm really thankful. Some of those children from Congo are ours. And my first question is, where is the Literacy Media Center?
So the ELL Family Media Center is located at the ESL office campus. So if you are familiar with the Kottmeyer building or campus, it's 4 small buildings. And building number 4 is the one that's housing ELL Family Media Center.
Okay, what's like a street address?
So it's 1530 South Grand, right across from Cardinal Glen Children's Hospital.
Okay, thank you. So we have 9 schools that are ELL centers. How many certified ESL teachers do we have there or at other schools?
So we currently have more than 60 ESL teacher positions in the district. I would say more than 25 of them are at the elementary level, and then the rest is secondary.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank
Williams?
you, Dr. Gonzalez del Castillo, for a very comprehensive, informative presentation. Our final presentation this evening is our comprehensive school improvement plan. As part of our commitment to the board, to our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and certainly to our community, each month our pillar leads provide a brief update to the board regarding our progress toward goal attainment as part of our forward-looking vision centering equity and excellence. So I'm going to invite Ms. Cheryl Vanoy, pillar lead for pillar 1, to the podium. This evening, I see we're tag teaming, so I'll invite Deputy Superintendent Watson to the podium. Good strategy, Deputy Vanoy.
Thank you. And again, tonight we're going to provide an update in regards to a Transformation Plan 4.0. And as you can see, our North Star, and this again, symbolism for providing the direction and guidance in the blueprint for supporting our scholars, our students, our buildings, so that we can prepare them for this 21st century learning. So the first particular piece in regards to Pillar 1, and I'll be also followed by my colleagues so they can give a briefing of their different pillars as well as what we have for Pillar 1. Pillar 1, our SMART goal, was for energy. So another acronym, BEP, for building energy performance, is a goal in the direction for this particular pillar and for this particular goal. As it states and as it reads, that all of our buildings that has over 50,000 square feet have to be in compliance with this Energy Star rating of at least 75. So some of the actionable items that you see are we monitoring our Energy Star ratings. Every year we have to submit information to the city and what we call the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. To date, we have approximately 15 schools that have met that target. As President Cousins kind of mentioned earlier, we have acknowledged at least one of our schools, which is Henry, who was awarded the national or the National Green Ribbon School Award. This is what we would like to mirror for all of our facilities. So as we be intentional about our work, and some of the other bullets in terms of some of the Go Green initiatives, where all schools that we're looking at participate in some Go Green initiatives. That means recycling and just becoming more energy conscious. And the last bullet in regards to curb appeal, and that's increasing green space project. Currently we have piloted what we call Frable, and the idea is that we identify at least 2 schools every year, and that's in conjunction with MSD and other stakeholders and organizations to really give our facilities a cleaner look in terms of natural gardens and similar items that we did and we're performing over at Frable. Some of the strategies to make our buildings energy efficient, LED upgrades, LED lighting. We've conducted this at least about 4 schools, and that generally cuts in terms of usage at least 20% of our utility usage goes down. So that also includes costs. Other initiatives include HVAC equipment and controls. So a lot of those board items that we brought before the board, or those agenda items that we brought before the board, include HVAC equipment and control repair. Windows, exterior door replacement, and the last is our demand response program. Last summer, we participated in the demand response program, and just to kind of put a perspective, Ameren, they generally do this, and they call us for those high peak time areas. So last year, for maybe about 4 days, 3 hours per day, we shut down approximately 48 schools between the hours of 3:30 and 6:30. We got an energy savings of $188,000 for just 4 days and 3 hours per day. But that's participating in the demand response program, and we'll continue to do that to make our buildings more energy efficient. The next few slides speak to just the data. This is the information, the data that we submit into the city. Our baseline data starting of 2021, last year 2022, and we just submitted in our performance data for this year. We have seen increases based on the initiatives that were just described before. The small things go a long way with our HVAC upgrades in particular that have really been instrumental in making sure that we meet our goal. Because the goal is by 2024 that the majority of our schools, I believe 70%, have to be at that at least 63.5 threshold, which is the minimal standard, but the Energy Star rating standard of at least 75. And I will pass it over to my colleague, Dr. Bender, for a Pillar 2 update.
Dr. Crapo.
So not Dr. Bender, but Dr. Crapo. It's fitting, I think, that we are spotlighting Pillar 2 this week on specifically equitable student health access, because it is National Nurses Week. So I'd like that those two things lined up. So as the board may be aware, we have been partnering with Hazel Health to provide telehealth medical services to our students this year. And so one of the ways that we're monitoring this is by providing training to our nurses or our medical designees. And so our goal for this year is that 80% of our nurses and our medical designees in schools will be provided training in the use of telehealth services. And I want to tell you why. So part of this is because we feel like the connection between our nurses and our families is critical in this. And so if our nurses and our medical designees have background and education on Hazel Health, this telehealth service program, then we believe that more of our families will be utilizing this program. So I want to talk about the data from this year, and then more importantly, how we're going to move forward next year to ensure that more of our families sign up for this service. So to date, we have 1,900 families who consented to the telehealth services. So that means they went online or they did the paper form and consented to have their children be part of it. 59 have declined. Since the beginning of the year, we've had 108 visits, 98 individual visits, 10 duplicate visits. I think what's interesting here is that students that remained in school post-visit were 62%. Over 200 instructional hours have been preserved with the use of this telehealth medical service. And Hazel Health tells us that each visit saves about 3 hours of instructional time. So we think that this is a very valuable service, but we know we have to do a better job of getting investment from our parents and getting more of our families to sign up. And so what we're doing is we are relaunching Hazel Health next year to make sure that more of our families have this information. The Hazel Health enrollment form will be part of the enrollment packets that our students receive. Will have a QR code, so it's much easier for our families to show up. But I think one of the things we want to do is just explain to our families what is this? So what would an actual visit look like? So two things that we've done. One is the Office of Institutional Advancement has created a video with a testimonial from a family sharing about their experience with Hazel Health, and it's on our Facebook page right now. I think it's at the top of the feed. The second thing that we're doing, I'm going to have Ms. Van Nooy roll the video. It's a 1-minute video that we've been sharing with our families that just explains what this is, what the process is, and what the visit looks like.
Hazel Health offers on-demand doctor visits to provide students access to quality healthcare. Hazel Health partners with schools to offer this service both at home and at school. Here's how it works at school. When your child visits the health office, they are connected with a doctor on a video call. Hazel Health doctors determine the treatment needed and, with your permission, can provide that treatment. Over-the-counter medicine can be distributed right then and there. After the visit is completed, Hazel Health will send you a full summary of the visit. If needed, Hazel Health can call in a prescription at your local pharmacy. Your child is then free to go back to class. Hazel at Home is accessible wherever you have a phone or computer. First, sign up for Hazel Health. After that process is completed, log in here. Tell Hazel medical staff about your child's health concern.
It sounds like you've got a headache this morning.
Doctors at Hazel will review symptoms to determine the next steps. After the visit, you will receive a full summary of your child's visit. Have questions? You can either visit us online or call us.
So again, we're hoping that this and then
Hazel Health offers on-demand
Thank you. We're hoping that this and then the specific video that OIA took a lot of time to create a wonderful video with a specific testimonial will increase the number of our families that are enrolling. And again, at the end of the day, we want to be able to provide access to healthcare for our students and save time, save instructional time for our families. If a student doesn't need to go home, we want to be able to keep them at school, and we find that this service can do that for us. So I will turn it over to my colleague. I want to double check that it's Mr. Charles Burton who will be presenting on Pillar 3.
Good evening again, members of the board. Charles Burton, your Chief Human Resource Officer. The small goal that we've highlighted for Pillar 3 or spotlighted for Pillar 3 has to do with satisfaction of our leaders, school leaders around student discipline. You'll recall this goal was developed in concert with our other goal around reducing student suspensions, out-of-school suspensions. And we decided as a committee, as a team, that it wasn't enough to say you can't send children home, that we needed to support schools and leaders around how they supported children who were there at school dealing with those behavior challenges. And so this is the first year we developed this baseline data. Last year, over the last couple of years, in terms of panorama data, we collect a very generic set of data, if you will, around what is, if you will, how fairly do district leaders treat school leaders. We then, for this year and moving forward, we start collecting more specific data around how well do you feel supported around student behavior and discipline. And we broke that up into two pieces: network superintendents and central office. Looking at network superintendents, principals stated that they felt they were supported. 68% of those principals responded favorably to that. You can see the number for the rest of central office was 37%. This is baseline data, so we don't have anything to compare it to as for last year. As we looked at the various strategies being implemented, part of the way schools felt supported most were taking a team approach to discipline, with central office staff being direct support and coaching, the use of in-school suspension as a way of supporting them, and then also the use of parental appearance notices. We are working together collectively, getting leader voice as well as central office and network voice, and developing our district-wide standards for support moving forward, and then of course our comprehensive plan to support around alternative discipline and student support over the course of the next year. So that's that one bullet point that we're highlighting, and that is why. And then I will now turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Marianne Smith, Jr.
And so with Pillar 4, I'd like to say that this is our bread and butter as a school district. So this is around learning and teaching. And the actual pillar is students learn to read and succeed. The spotlight for this month is taking us to the end of our journey. What happens after 12th grade? And so goal 3A talks about by 2026, 95% of our graduating seniors will be positively placed, and that's a term used by DESE. And that just simply means that there is a placement either in a post-secondary space, employment, or the workforce. The data that we have is from 2022 as our baseline. So we conduct a 180-day follow-up tracker by school. It's utilized, it's monitored, and it's updated annually by our CCR department. So if you take a look in 2022, we completed that information, and we have the percentage of our graduates that were either enrolled in a post-secondary institution, enlisted in the military, or employed. And we see that that represented 93.2%. So that's the baseline that we're using. We know that we have graduations coming up in a few weeks, and so we'll be able to begin our 180-day follow-up after our class of 2023 graduates. But what I would like to bring your attention to is the bottom left-hand corner of the slide. Those are the key strategies that we're utilizing to track this particular goal. So 5 that are called out. The first is our CCR, so College and Career Readiness Tracker, that is tracked monthly. We have our Early College Academy work that we're looking at. We track our Learn and Earn internship program and the participation there. We also track and work directly with our college admission advisors who do a lot of work with our CCR staff and school-based staff as well to work on that 180-day follow-up tracker. And then lastly, you've heard the JAG program, JAG, so Jobs for American Graduates programs. On the lower right-hand corner, that's the data that we actually have on that College and Career Readiness Tracker as of April of 2023. And so you have the list of all of our high schools, the number of senior scholars that we have, the number of our scholars or percentage of scholars that are on track for graduation. Remember, we track this every month. We also focus on the percentage of our scholars that have taken at least one post-assessment or post-secondary assessment, whether that is the ACT, the SAT, Accuplacer, or ASVAB for military. And then the final 3 pieces of information that we track is what DESE calls that positive placement. So looking at, are they employed, have they enlisted in the military, or have they enrolled in some form of post-secondary education. And so we wanted to spotlight what happens when they graduate and the data that we're tracking. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Pillar 5, my colleague, Gloria Willis.
Good evening. And for the purposes of giving a little bit of an overview for our newer board members, Pillar 5 is growing community partnerships and resources that support the district's transformation plan. And our SMART goals, that would include inclusion and equity. Our SMARTY goals revolve around volunteer and mentor services, partners, and public-private funding, and community engagement and support. So what you're seeing now is a highlight, a little dive into what we're doing with volunteer services. And this has, it was basically supposed to be read last board meeting. And so I have some updates for you that are not on your, the one that you have. We have 223 people who are accessing the check-ins and check-outs for our volunteer services feedback program. This is something very new. We're only doing this in 8 schools right now, and we are working to find out what's valuable to our volunteers and how we could better serve them. All of our volunteers are VIPs, but over the summer we're going to do an overhaul of our program to make sure that our parents are also realizing that we're going to put them first in a lot of different ways, including over the summer try and stress with our parents the importance of getting their information in so that we can do our background checks ahead of getting into the school year. There's always a backlog at the beginning of the school year for background checks. So we're wanting to make sure that our parents are aware of getting the information in over the summer so that we can have them in good shape for the start of the school year. So this is going to be an overall summer program to try and get more of our volunteers involved in helping us to shore up our program as it stands. Right now we're getting a lot of good feedback. Of the people who are using our check-in and check-out systems, there's the feedback shows that 178 have rated the process and the experience at the school as excellent, 41 satisfactory, and 2 have given us some ideas on how we might be able to improve. In addition, there's a comments and feedback section, and we're monitoring those as well. So basically, we're in the analytics stage of our program and hoping to expand over the summer to include the open houses that will give us an opportunity to work one-on-one with volunteers and help them coach them through the process. We believe that a more robust landing page on the website would be helpful as well. And so that's one of the targets that we're working on at this time. Our training is going to have to shift a little bit because we've been relying on our family community specialists to do some training with us and to help facilitate and to welcome the volunteers and sometimes the partners in our schools. But we'll be broadening that scope to kind of balance out who our welcoming parties are within the school and working very closely to bring them into the loop. We're also working on making sure that we, in the Office of Institutional Advancement, can facilitate the information that goes out to our volunteers. The schools have the bulk of that responsibility right now to basically communicate to the volunteer that they are completely background checked, they're ready, they're certified, they're ready to roll, and that's not happening at a level that we're happy with. So what we're going to do is try and take it in-house to make sure that we make those connections, which are very valuable, we realize, to our volunteers. I'm going to slide in something here on partnerships because partnerships is also in this area. And in this deep dive, we also want to talk about the fact that we recently had a partner fair where there were 70 partners that were here in this room and very excited about gearing up for the next school year. This is the first one we've had since the pandemic. So partners and volunteers are off to a very good start as we work to shore up those programs over the summer and bring you into a new process going into the new school year. Any questions? Thank you.
Any questions for any of the presenters?
I have a question for Dr. Smith Jr. Looking at the data, especially the CCR tracker summary, and looking at some of the schools where
Ms. Floyd, can you pull that back up for us, please? Thank you.
You know, where the numbers may be low. Are there other data points earlier on in either middle school or high school that we track that are good indicators that this student is maybe going to struggle once we get to graduation day in terms of graduation and post-graduation? So, for example, you know, if they're behind on credits, attendance, things like that, are there data points that we monitor earlier on, so by the time it comes to May of your senior year, we'll have by then it's too late. So are there data points that we do, and if there are, what interventions are we doing, or what further interventions do you think that we need?
Sure, and so I can address that in two parts. So overarchingly, we like to look at the ABCs, right? So we look at attendance, behavior, and course completion. And what that looks like is we have freshman success teams. So one data point that's not called out here because we're looking at seniors is our freshman success data. So every progress reporting period, every quarter, we're looking at those scholars that have either received a D or an F in a core course. And so we track that by school. We work with our freshman success teams that are in each building. And so the teams in that particular school then have that deep dive conversation, right? So I'm tracking that Marion has a D in this particular course, they have an F at the quarter, and then at the semester, they actually failed the semester, so they didn't earn that credit. And so what are we going to do? The second part to your question is, what do we do before we get to that semester, right? So that's where we go back to what are those interventions that we can put in place. From a classroom perspective, teachers are meeting, talking about, do we need to have behavioral supports? Do we need to have targeted academic interventions? Do we need to do ... right? So we do track that data, but it's overarching attendance, behavior, and course completion, really focusing on that freshman success team, because the data shows that if you fail a course in your first semester in 9th grade, the probability, and I would have to get the most current research in 2023, that it's a probability that you will not graduate from high school. So that's why we are very intentional about having those freshman success teams and tracking the data every progress monitoring period.
And I don't know, maybe for a future presentation, I would be interested in knowing, in terms of the freshman success teams and the interventions that they have. So, you know, how many times do they meet? How many students do they identify? You know, what types of interventions are present? And I'm especially concerned about where we're lacking because we know based on the attendance numbers and our APR data, that is just a huge, giant hurdle. So if we don't get past A, B and C are going to be a problem, and certainly graduation is going to be a problem.
Absolutely.
And we see from that APR data and attendance, you see it correlate to these numbers. So the schools that were really struggling, these kids aren't going on to successful careers or post-secondary education. So I'm just concerned that we're losing them early. And I would just, like in future presentations, really probably for everybody, that be addressed.
Sounds good.
I have Ms. Hubbard, one quick request for Mr. Burton. When you, just for the future, when you put your percentages, could you also put the real numbers? That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for the team?
Yes,
Ms. Jones.
my question is, I think it was to Dr. Smith, and the question was, when you're evaluating those freshmen in their early years, and I know you're talking about evaluating the student, but I have some concerns about the staff as well. Do you analyze the staff if they have 30 students in that particular school and all of them are getting D's and F's?
Absolutely.
So the teaching style might not be conducive to them being a great teacher.
No,
Do
I
you use
appreciate
that?
that question, yes. And so in addition to just the actual core course grades, our curriculum specialists also pull just classroom grades as well. So we're able to look, if I take all of the 7 members of the board, we're able to take a look at your first period English language arts class taught by Ms. Jones, had 15 Fs. So we do a deep dive into that, and our curriculum specialists then follow up with that particular teacher. And then if there is additional conversations that need to be had, then that goes to our AIC, our school principals, just to talk about what's happening in that particular class. So we do that deep dive, not only of the course grades, but also what's happening in each one of those classrooms.
Any other questions for the team? Dr. Williams?
So thank you very much. Pillar leads, teamwork indeed makes the dream work. So thank you for highlighting our data, monitoring processes, and sharing our collective journey toward goal attainment. I do want to take a moment and thank and recognize Terry Bullock, who's in the audience, for providing tools to support us with tracking and monitoring and reviewing our data on a regular basis. He's our operations coordinator in the academic department. Thank you, President Cousins. That concludes the presentations from the interim superintendent this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you to the staff. I know you guys are putting in some extra hours tonight, so thank you for your time and your commitment to the presentations that you've provided us. Now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. May consent agenda. Is there any questions on any of the May consent agenda that anyone would like to be pulled?
I do. I'd like to first pull 509-2308.
509-2308. Can I get a motion to approve 509-2301 to 509-2307?
I'll move to approve 509-2301 through 509-2307.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussions? Ms. Henry?
Mr. Hikes,
Yes.
Ms. Wise,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Ms. Val, Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Cousins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
I'll make a motion to approve 509-2308.
Second. Discussion.
This is a renewal of a MOU with the Demetrius Johnson Foundation. The data that was attached shows that this hasn't actually been in place for a while, and it only accommodates 6 students. I think as we go through these things, this one just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd?
So this is one of our community partners where we place our students out to get access for services, to get them exposure to working with different individuals, work on those skills, social skills, as well as independent skills. We have not placed students there because some of our partners either didn't have staff in place or they were still operating under COVID procedures and whatnot. So, and then we also had staffing shortages on our end. So that was the delay of why we did not implement this MOU partnership fully. But we have every intent moving forward for school year 23-24, if it's approved, to place our students with the Demetrius Johnson Foundation in their program.
So where is the program?
On Union.
So just so I understand, so these are special ed students
High school students
at Gateway STEM, and it indicates, so part of this, are they paid through STL Youth Jobs to do work at Demetrius Johnson Foundation?
They're paid there. I'm not sure if they're paid. I'm not able to check that out, Mr. Davis. But again, what we're trying to do is get them a community-based access to get them the exposure and training so that once they graduate, because these are going to be your juniors and your seniors. So once they graduate, they then have the skills, the exposure to be as independent as possible.
So the work that they're doing is at the foundation?
Yes.
So they work for the foundation?
They're working with the supervision of our staff at their location.
Okay, and what do they do there?
It can be a variety of different things. Can I give you more information on that? If I could do that for you regarding the paid piece and the exact tools in which they're doing, the exact duties that they're doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So would you want us to pull it?
Yeah, go ahead and pull it.
Okay.
Is this after school or during school?
This is doing school.
So is this somewhat like a co-op program, so to speak?
It is, because we have our teachers who accompany the students to the site, and then they are then supported by our staff and their staff.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I'm sorry. That's been pulled, so thank you, Ms. Boyd. We're going to go on to any other questions on any other things to be held on the consent agenda.
I wanted to pull 509-2324.
If no one else has anything between 509, Ms. Donna.
Okay, I'd like to, I have questions on 0509-2312, 0509-2313, and 0509-2304, 14.
Okay, so can I get a motion for 0509-2309 to 09-2310?
So moved.
Second. Ms. Henry?
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Abstain.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Ms. Jones, you were questioning 0509-2312?
Yes.
I need a motion for 09-2312.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Jones, discussion?
Okay, I guess I have some concerns because we continuously, most of these things on our agenda are renewals. And I don't recall seeing anything to really show how the services were utilized and the results, the data. And I'm just concerned that I just want to make sure that the money is going to be well spent and our students really receive the services that are listed here. Because right here, this is a memorandum of understanding with the Urban League to operate student and family support program. And I wanted to find out, does the district have its own student and family support program?
Ms. Jones, I'm sorry. That was 0509-2313. 12 is the handbook.
Oh, okay. Mine is different. Oh, I'm looking at a different one then.
I'm sorry.
I have the old one.
I think.
Yeah, I do. Which way is that one looking? Okay. Okay.
It was updated.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, this was the old one then with
That you're
a
fine, so
different
we're
number.
so we got a motion and a second for 05, 09, 23, 12. There's no discussion is there a discussion for that one?
Yes, it is.
Not for that one, for the handbook.
Oh, no, not for the
Okay.
handbook, absolutely not.
Ms. Henry?
Mr. Hikes?
Yes.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay.
Excuse me, this is Natalie.
you back,
I'm back,
Natalie?
and my vote is yes as well. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you,
Okay,
Ms.
thanks.
Natalie. Okay, 09, I keep saying 09, 05, 09, 23, 13, I need a motion.
I'll move to approve 05, 09, 23, 13.
Second, discussion, Ms. Jones.
Okay, and this is 13, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's your Urban League one.
So my concern is, this is a memorandum of understanding with the Urban League to operate student and family support programs. I want to find out, do we currently have, and I thought I was under the impression that we have our own student and family support program that we're operating in the district.
There are many different programs. This is able to offer supports on some things we can't do. And some things we don't have enough staff to do. So they do case management, helping families. Sometimes it can be helping a parent find employment. It can sometimes be transporting a family. We cannot transport children. So sometimes when there are issues, they can step in and assist like that. So there is a lot of family support that does go on by the district. But we have found that bringing in outside providers can supplement that and enrich what we're able to do for our families. So this is one of the ways that we utilize to be able to make sure that we give our families as much service as possible.
So how do you protect the data that you allow the outside vendors to utilize when it comes to our students? And how do you look at the data to make sure they're actually getting what they say?
When we work with outside providers, we do send our principals surveys to fill out. Are you pleased with the provider? Are they doing the things they've said? They give us reports regularly on how many students are served, how many families are contacted, how many families may be taken to doctor's appointments, different things like that. So we get all of those kind of things to determine if this is something we feel is valuable for our families and our schools, taking into consideration the input from the staffs at the school to make sure, because we don't see all of that, but that is why we verify with our school principals and our staff on the site that these services are in fact being rendered to a satisfactory level.
So you mentioned the staff, but I'm interested in knowing about how the family actually feels they were treated and what service they actually received. And I know you say you just received it from the principal, but in the final analysis, to me, everybody's going to want to make themselves look good. And I'm interested in finding out, how can you find out what the family actually feels, or the student, how do they feel about the services they were provided with? Because clearly, I'm not saying SLPS is not doing a great job or not trying to, but we're clearly losing so many students. And I just want to make sure that we are doing what we say we're doing on here.
I think that's a great point. I don't believe we have surveyed families related to this, but I will definitely recommend that in the future they do that. And as to, the vendors do provide us their reports, but as I said, we do ask the district principals or social workers, whoever's involved, and we get very candid responses. We do not bring everyone back for renewals because sometimes the principals are like, no, we are not even sure what they're doing. So when that is the case, we cease and desist.
Can the board be alerted when you cease and desist? Because if we're going to be making decisions that are worth millions of dollars, I would like to know, because I don't want to give anyone an okay that hasn't been doing what they say they're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
I just have a question about this program. So in terms of at these three schools, this program, it talks a lot about, responding to emergencies with utilities, evictions, things like that. So do these mentors in the schools work then with the students in transition office? Because it seems like there's some overlap between those services. So I know caseworkers is kind of shorted in that office, especially because, you know, there's a lot of paperwork that has to be done, especially at the beginning of the year. So are they trained to identify maybe if McKinney-Vento is to be activated for these students, and then do they communicate with the SIT office?
Yes, they do. I will say, as you know, I have most recently jumped into this role.
You know, the excuses keep coming. It's
Listen,
been like 3
I'm not
weeks.
done, brother. I'm not
Come
done.
on.
I'm not done. All right. So one of the things that's been really interesting, I found, and I'm learning a great deal, is we've brought the different divisions together to talk about where we're duplicating services. Who should be the lead on this? Who should be the lead on that? That had not been the practice, but we are trying to refine that. So I'm right where you are, because sometimes we're not working as smart as we should, and we're trying to get there.
I'm not sure, like I said, I have a different agenda copy with different numbers. But this one is to approve a renewal contract with the Urban League to operate the same student and family support program at a cost not to exceed $525,000.
That one was pulled.
It was pulled. All right, thank you. Okay.
Thank you. It's been motion and moved. Can we get a vote?
Mr. Hikes?
Yes.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Val? Ms. Jones?
No.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Any items between 05, 09, 23, 14, and moving forward? Any other questions? Any items wanting to be pulled?
05, 9, 23, 24.
Anyone else? Ms. Donna, do you need a new, or are you okay?
Yeah, I do have one.
Okay. Did you have anything?
It's 05092350.
So we're good to go from 05, 09, 23, 14 to, what did you say, Matt?
So I make a motion to approve 05, 09, 23, 14 through 05, 23, 23.
Second. Discussions? Ms. Henry?
Mr. Hikes?
Yes.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Val?
I'm sorry, point of clarity, did someone say that 15 had been pulled,
No,
or is that included?
it's included.
Okay. Abstain.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
I'll make a motion to approve 05, 09, 23, 24.
Second. Discussion?
Yeah, Dr. Class, I see you're ready. I just had a question.
Dr. Class.
$15,000 for 2 months of yoga?
That's $7,000.
So
Well,
it's changed to 7,000 because
we're
it did not
down to
start
1
until-
month?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just, it's kind of a head scratcher on the return on investment. I mean, they've got at least one, maybe 2 PE teachers at Pomojo? One. And, I mean, is this not something that the PE teacher, because it's during PE, right?
During PE, yes.
And so is this not something that the PE teacher could provide, or at least learn to provide?
Possibly learn to provide.
Okay. I
But
mean, I'm sorry, it's on here, it caught my eye, I read the supporting documentation. I know that it's ESSER money, I know that there's a, you know, and listen, I'm all for yoga, I love it, I need to start doing it again, right, Dr. Williams? You know, and I all the supporting documentation, it just, you know, and I hate to nitpick on a $430 million budget and $150 million ESSER funds, you know, $7,500 for yoga, it just seems kind of high. Yes, no?
So the outcome is really to help support our students, not just with the yoga, but for stress and just to really help them, to give them tools for their emotional support. And so, yes, our PE teacher could do some form of exercise and some form of yoga, but it's not the same. So.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Jones? I thought you had a question.
No, I had a question about 2350.
Okay. If there's no other questions, Ms. Henry?
Mr. Hikes?
Is this just for 24, right? No.
Ms. Wise? No, I think that's a very high cost. While I love yoga and I love mindfulness in schools, that is too high of a cost. No. Ms. Hubbard?
No.
Ms. Val?
Abstain.
Ms. Jones?
No.
Mr. Davis?
No.
Ms. Cousins?
No.
Motion failed.
Anything from 05, 09, 23, 25, and beyond? Anything pulled? Any questions? So from 05, 09, 23, 25 to 05, 09, 23, 32. Are we good? I need a motion.
32.
To 32, yes.
So I'll move to approve 05, 09, 23, 25 to 05, 09, 23, 32.
Second. Any discussion? Ms. Henry?
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Weiss? Yes. Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Val?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Anything from 05, 09, 23, 33 to 05, 09, 23, 44. Can I get a motion?
So moved. 05, 09, 23, 33 to 05, 09, 23, 44.
Second. Discussion. Ms. Henry?
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Sorry, I had a question on 33, the dynamic vending to provide beverage and snack vending services. And the vendor will pay the district commissions on the sales from the vending machines. Do we have information on exactly what that percentage is or any projected revenue from that?
05, 09, 23, 33, there's a discussion. It reads to approve contract renewal with Dynamic Vending to provide beverage and snack vending and services district schools for the period July 1st, 23rd through June 30th, 2024. That is Pillar 5. Oh, you're here, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard Santiago.
I am working with fiscal control, so I'm waiting on that information from the director.
So would you rather us pull it?
You can, and I can get that information.
Ms. Bowell, are you okay with us pulling it until we get more information?
That's fine with me, thank you.
Thank
So
you.
I just had a question. So in board docs, the supporting data said if the question is commissions, it looks like, well, $31,718.38. Does that sound right?
It could be a little less, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So I need to find that information.
Okay.
I do have a question as well on that same item. Is it possible that we can start to consider allowing our students at each school to have a vending machine to supply perhaps their after-school activity or something like an after-school program instead of we've been having this same vendor for a long time, and I don't see any reason why our students can't come together and have it as a fundraiser, because after all, they're the ones throwing all their money inside that machine. And can we consider that in the future, please?
At the elementary level?
Elementary, high school as well, because many of our schools don't have after-school clubs like some of the other schools in the area. And I think they would need that kind of funding. And some of our PTOs, in particular on the north side, they don't have any money like some of the other schools do. And I think the vending machine could really help.
We can look into that.
Thank you.
We can look into that.
So I'll withdraw my motion.
I need a motion for 0509-2334 to 0509-2344.
So moved.
Second. Any discussions? Ms. Henry?
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Val?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Any discussions or anything pulled from 0509-2345 to 0509-2352?
Yes, I had a question.
You want something pulled?
Yes, 0509-2350. I had a question.
Anything else? I need a motion for 0509-2345 to 0509-2349.
So moved.
Second. Any discussions? Ms. Henry?
Mr. Heights?
It stops at 49, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Val?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
I'll make a motion to approve 0509-2350.
Second. Discussion. Ms. Jones?
Okay, I was under the impression that this was being reworded because we wanted to make sure that the ownership remained with the building. And I don't know, the way it reads, it doesn't, it looks like to approve a contract with St. Louis Shakespeare's Festival for the purchase and training of theater microphones. I don't understand how this would prove ownership to the building.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Nichols?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, the equipment will be owned by Sumner High School. So, to my understanding, it was worded in a way where we are in full control. St. Louis Public Schools, Sumner High School, we will own the equipment.
I know, but it says, it doesn't even say St. Louis Public School. It says St. Louis Shakespeare Festival. That's what I'm trying to understand. I thought we sent it back so that it would say St. Louis Public Schools, your school, and so that you guys would have ownership of this equipment. I would vote right on with it, but it keeps saying Shakespeare.
Yes, Shakespeare and Switch, they are the ones that we're purchasing the equipment from. So once we purchase the equipment will remain at Sumner High School.
Oh, you're
Yes.
purchasing it from Shakespeare.
Yes.
Oh,
The
this is
equipment
not
is
new
new.
equipment?
This is brand new equipment.
Oh.
Brand new
okay.
equipment.
Okay, well, that answers that. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols.
Any other questions? Ms. Henry?
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Val?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Oh 0509-2351. I need a motion.
Move to approve 0509-2351.
Second. Any discussions? Ms. Henry?
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Val?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
0509-2352.
Move to approve 0509-2352.
Second. With discussions? Ms. Jones? Is that you? Oh, or Mr. Davis?
No discussion.
Did you have questions?
Well, I did have a question, yeah, because I thought that we had discussed this and that we were going to localize this service versus going with this organization.
Ms. Willis? I'm sorry.
It's all right, thank you. Ms. Jones, what we did was go back and retool the event to make it a more centralized event and more useful to us in ways of getting registration completed at this event So rather than lose the opportunity to have that much contact with a great audience like that, we were able to just simply retool it to make it more useful to us as a school district. And that means taking over more of the marketing and communications, making it strategically more successful for us in terms of giving our parents the opportunity to come in a centralized location and receive immunizations, receive sign-off for telehealth, receive registration information. So our thinking was that with the Urban League, we have a built-in audience. We have a site that our children and our parents are used to going to, and that this would give us firsthand interaction with our families. That doesn't mean that we would not pick up additional events across the district to try and help bring people into the back-to-school mode, so to speak, but this event we thought was too important to keep from the sheer aspect of the kind of numbers that we receive at this event.
Do you know how much money the Urban League makes off this event through selling sponsorships and booth fees?
I do believe they have given us some information, Mr. Davis, but I don't have that right now. I will ask Mr. Ryan L. Jackson, who's been working more closely with them, to get that for you, but they have provided us with the financials to show what they've been doing and what they're working with.
And so it's a fundraiser for their organization.
I don't think they consider it a fundraiser. I'm not quite sure how they work their numbers in terms of making sure that they give everything on all the services that people need at this event to the families. I think it does cost them quite a bit, and they do try to bring in talent that would draw people into the event. So they do put money behind this, but I will have to say that I do not know what their actual financials say. I do have access to that and can bring that forward. But for our investment, we are only providing $15,000, and that is specifically to be used for our purposes. You know, this event is open to the students across the city of St. Louis. That's how the Urban League operates. But we are able to localize our funding to make sure that our students get the best of our funding. This year, I will point out that we no longer have to provide, thanks to the board and to the district, we don't have to provide supplies. So that's not something that we have to worry about, but we do want to take advantage of getting our parents in a face-to-face situation in which they can sign up for telehealth. They can be walked through our registration, and they can certainly get the immunization and physicals that they might not otherwise be able to.
So have we set up to do this in other locations, like South Side, centrally located?
We have not at this time. That's certainly something that we are looking into. The manpower that it takes to put those together is something that we couldn't do between now and August, but we did say that we would be looking into trying to provide additional opportunities. We do have events across the city of St. Louis through our recruitment team, and we do offer some of those services in these types of events, including some of the parades and opportunities coming up where we'll have booths there. But we will also, have ELL back to school, and we have students in transition back to school. So there are different opportunities for students to take advantage of back to school.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the map of St. Louis, and maybe when you're saying centralized, you just mean one location, but it's on the edge of St. Louis.
Yes, yes.
Not in the middle.
And
it's never felt accessible for me to take my 4 children to that place from Dutchtown or from Carondelet.
Right. Thank you for allowing me to clarify. When I said centralized, I mean centralized functions. You know, everything that we would like to introduce our families to will be at this event. It will be all in one spot. As far as accessibility, Central Missouri Bus Services has very kindly offered to transport our students at no charge from various transportation points across the district. So we will designate several pickup spots. They did this last year as well. We'll pick up several different spots across the district, and the children will ride it, and those buses will loop. And they're providing that to us again free of charge.
Any other questions? Ms. Henry?
Mr. Hikes,
Yes.
Ms. Weiss,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
No.
Ms. Val,
Abstain.
Ms. Jones,
No.
Mr. Davis,
No.
Ms. Cousins.
No.
Motion failed.
I'll make a motion to approve 509-2353 and 509-2354.
Second. Any discussions? Ms. Henry?
Mr. Hikes,
Yes.
Ms. Weiss,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Ms. Val,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Cousins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Board reports.
I just have a quick legislative update. 3 days to go. The Senate adjourned early, the House adjourned early. There really has not been any major education bills that have passed both houses yet, except for the budget, which was very favorable for public education. We'll be digging more into that again, but we hope to have a more thorough legislative update either at a legislative meeting or at the next work session, which will be on May 24th. So it's just down to crunch time, and so hopefully all of the bad bills, they will run out of time, and we will have had a successful year, but we still have 3 days for them to do a lot of damage.
And correction, we are trying to make sure open enrollment does not.
The open enrollment bill has been constantly mutating as they're trying to figure out what they can pass. And so it's passed different versions in both chambers, so they have to come on to an agreed upon bill. Right now, all that work is landing in the Senate. And like I said, if it has a bill that isn't a bill that passed the House already and there's changes made, it'll have to go back to the House. They're down to 3 days. The legislature has to adjourn at 6 o'clock on Friday. So they may just be running out of time because it is still a very controversial bill, and it doesn't seem like there's yet to be any compromises with any opponents. So fingers crossed.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any other board reports? I do want to let the board know you guys should have received some packages before you. We have a lot of potential opportunities for professional development. Please take a look at it. There's one for Chicago Sustainability Community School Tours, Journey for Justice Alliance. It will be Wednesday, May 31st to Thursday, June 1st. MSBA Board Association is having their summit, which is June 16th to June 17th in Branson, Missouri. And we have a potential one coming up again for Council of Great Cities. Is this the PAR? Is this the? For the board, the PELP, that's what it is. Right, so that's something definitely I think everyone should take a look at. And AFT has their conference, AFT Teachers Conference in 2023 from July 21st to July 23rd in Washington, D.C. So these are definitely professional development opportunities. A lot of the professional development that we've had the opportunity to do has given us a clear understanding of what our roles and expectations are as board members and how we are to govern ourselves. With that, we're going to go to public comments, if there's no other reports. Yes, ma'am, you are.
The Prop S subcommittee of the Budget Committee met, and we got to see a presentation very much like the one we saw about CSMB and CVPA, and it was very encouraging.
Thank you, Ms. Hubbard. We're going to go to public comments. I want to keep in mind, we are limited, everyone, to 3 minutes in your comments. Please refrain from speaking directly or derogatory to us as board members. Do not utilize our names. And first up, we have Mr. McQuarrie.
Thank you for taking my comment today. Johnny McCreary. I'm a professional certified teacher with over 30-plus years of successful years with St. Louis Public Schools, with Candace in special ed. I am asking the St. Louis Public School Board and the superintendent, please consider having some board meetings for the coming school year at our neighborhood elementary, middle, and high school with auditoriums. St. Louis Public Schools are the center of our neighborhood and community. The challenge is, can we create a renewed partnership with all stakeholders where St. Louis Public Schools is the learning cultural center of our community? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. McQuarrie. Sorry, you gotta bear with me, I can't see. Ms. Lauren Preston.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Preston. I'm a parent of 3 kids in St. Louis Public Schools, and I'm here tonight. One of the things is to update you on my daughter, who I'm sure you've all heard about, struggling to learn to read, because I've been here before telling you about her. I was told, you know, right after the pandemic, just wait it out, wait and see, she's going to be okay. But it was the beginning of first grade, she still didn't know all of her alphabet letters, and I was not satisfied with that. So to point out parents' rights in St. Louis public, well, I mean, in any public school through IDEA, I referred her, and she qualified with a reading disability, but she still was not making adequate progress, because in January of 2022, she still couldn't read basic words like dog, cat, right? And so I filed mediation with the state, which is, again, my right under IDEA as a parent. And the district was great to negotiate with me, and we got evidence-based services and some other supports for my daughter, who has additional needs as well. And fast forward to this year's second grade. In STAR reading, she was in 5th percentile in September. She was in 12th percentile in December. And now, I just got her most recent reports, she is at 29th percentile, which is a huge growth curve. Now, that still means that 70% of kids are reading better than she is at this grade. So we still have a lot of work to do. I'm grateful for the teachers who switch up curriculum and learn new methods, and we're open to that. I'm grateful for the, again, this special education department. I was also fortunate to be able to take classes at Webster University with the reading program, and I didn't know at the time it's the only program that's accredited by the International Dyslexia Association. So I actually learned what reading methods she was supposed to be, learning, and she's made progress. I've learned how to work with her myself. This helped to undo the damage that I learned from UMSL, which told me just give kids books they will like to read, teach them to love reading, they'll learn how to read, which is incidentally how they're still teaching our St. Louis public teachers on our dollar. So I want to say that this progress that my daughter made was due to one-to-one support 2 times a week with a reading specialist, 60 minutes a day in special education class, and the reading specialist pushing into the 2nd grade class as well. So she's grown, but it's a story of struggle as well. It means that I had to put in a tremendous amount of work in order to see that happen. And it was the equivalent of having a part-time job, but really, really lousy pay, except the fact that my daughter is progressing and learning how to read. So I'm grateful for all of you who've listened. I'm grateful for all of you who have reached out and supported. But I just want to say to parents, don't wait and see. Ask for the STAR reports. Don't look at grade level, look at percentile. If your kid is 40th percentile or below, ask what is going to happen next. What are the methods that your teachers are trained in? But I'm also asking the school district, don't wait for a parent referral. Have your own flow chart in place to be able to identify cut scores. MTSS will not absolve the district from child fine. You could still be found out of compliance because, again, it does not replace child fine obligations. I believe that together we can support our students and our St. Louis Public School District, which is the only district required to give these IEP kinds of services. But I just thank you all.
Thank you. Ms. Shantae Pointer. You know, yeah, I'm working on it. I'm trying.
Hello, my name is Shantae Pointer, and I am a lead organizer with SEIU Local 1. We represent the cafeteria workers who provide meals for the children of St. Louis Public Schools every day that they're in school. One of the district's core beliefs is that St. Louis Public Schools are obligated to help students overcome any obstacles that may hinder their learning, forming partnerships with the entire community. Many of our members have worked in your district for decades for the current food service provider, Southwest Foods, and other companies before them. We understand that the district is seeking proposals for food service companies to run the school's cafeteria. Our members have good union contracts with Southwest Foods, and we enjoy the working relationship with Southwest Foods and have been able to ensure labor peace in the district. While we see no reason to change, we recognize that the district may want to go in a different direction. We just want to ensure that the district we just want to ensure that the district go in a direction and our members don't get caught in the middle of that. We believe that they should keep their jobs and their union wages and benefits. If there is a change in the food service providers, we urge the board to demand that that the employment of our current workers keep the existing bargaining contract that they're working under to continue to support their families. Students deserve the best, and the food service staff that play such an instrumental part in serving our children their foods. We don't want them worrying about their job or their pay or their benefits. Thank you for your consideration and giving me this time.
Thank you. Ms. Bailey.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here tonight. Due to the lateness of the hour, I will try to be brief, but I want to thank you. I hear that I'm going to be out of the rain this summer. Thank you very much. I'd like to share with you a wonderful experience that we had in a crunch, working with some of the staff members and the administrators in the St. Louis Public School District. We were able to secure the St. Louis Torchbearers 2 a small grant to get swimming lessons for children, 16 one-hour lessons. And we were able to muster support from 4 schools, and I'm going to tell you, those principals were really supportive of their children getting there to the swim lessons from their school to Wold Center. But the grant included a $60 stipend per student, so they could get a swimsuit, a towel, a backpack, goggles, and then 1-hour lessons that they didn't pay for. We partnered with some churches for transportation, and this time we were able to offer the churches funding for their transportation, and we also got their drivers, so there was money flowing in the district. There was lots of fun, and there were lots of learning opportunities for our children. And we paired some of the experiences with academic skills. The children were diving for states, shapes like states, so they had to identify the states when they were diving. Of course, there were lots of math skills. I don't have to tell you about those. We partnered with approximately 10 organizations to be able to provide every child at the end with a book about swimming. And League of Women Voters was a very strong component and supporter of ours. But I did want to say, after all these years, I commend the board. I'm very proud to be a retired employee in the district with the support that we just received in approximately 4 weeks to get all of these students, almost 89 children, 1-hour swim lessons. We complied with our grant. The children are happy. And from the words of one of the 5-year-olds, every time it was time to get out of the pool, he would say, no, no, I've got to get back in that water. Let me back in that water. So the children had a wonderful time, and I think it is because of the experiences that this new board has in place. I think it's the courage that people are feeling to act as an employee and a conscientious, compassionate person working with our children. So I would like to come back later, and if we could also be invited to the partnership meetings so that we can be more supportive of opportunities for our children. So I'm not sure, Dr. Williams, who can invite us. We'd also like to be involved with the ministers. But every child that left the school, left our program, had a library card. We made sure they applied. They have access to libraries, services. Every child made a poster. They're their own hero. So they get a chance to hang that up. They have access to books similar to what was talked about for the ELL children, but they can go to the library and they can trade books. They don't have to worry about owning those books. So many of you know the things that are happening, but for our parents, we provided every child with a movie ticket so that they could watch the movie Pride online, and it was about swimming and about a black man who trained some black children in Philadelphia in inner city school to swim. And they're getting scholarships, jobs, and all kinds of wonderful things that because of this board and the actions of your staff and your administrators is going to happen for the children who participated with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Thank you, Ms. Vanna White.
Yes. But you've been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Astor.
Good afternoon. I'm going to assume that you don't know. At the last board meeting, out of about 3 hours and 10 minutes of a meeting, this board spent about 10 minutes on academics. Tonight, out of around 3 hours, this board has spent a little bit more. We spent about an hour on academics, so about 30% on academics. In a district, in an academically failing school district, that's not okay. And so that's better than the 10 minutes from last meeting. But if we're serious about the academics as a school district, academic school, for me, should be the major priority. We should be spending a lot more time, the majority of the time, on academics. And I want to push the board to also focus more on data. And so at some times you had data in the presentations, but it wasn't enough, and I hope the board would follow up. For example, the ELL presentation had a data point about 70% of students are making progress in their speaking skills. Well, is that normal? If you take any kid from another country and put them in the English-speaking environment, how many of them will make progress, right? And so if 80% of them will make progress, actually, we're doing them a disservice, right? If usually it's 90% make progress, like what is the actual effect of our ELL program? And so I ask you to push for actual data that measures progress and outcomes. Similarly, in the SPED presentation, I really didn't hear any data about how many students are being serviced, how many students are being serviced on time, what are the outcomes of those students compared to students who are not in special education. So if you can just push a little bit more on the data, I think we'll, the public and the board would have a better sense of the actual progress or lack thereof happening in the district. This board, when I come to meetings, they say that you all will respond to, you don't respond in the meeting. But however, even though I've spoken at many board meetings now. I've never gotten a response. I call, I don't get a response. I send emails, I don't get a response. And so I'm asking explicitly for a response. One, can you please move the public comment to the beginning of the meetings before presentation so that members of the public don't have to wait 3+ hours to participate? Second, will you spend the majority of the time of your future, or would you commit to spend the majority of the time at these board meetings on academics? It seems like a pretty fair ask as a school district. Also, what is the district's approach to literacy? The lady who spoke, I think, referenced some of the troubling practices that sometimes are not evidence-based. And also, can you set a school-wide literacy goal? Right now, we're under 20%. I think we're under 10% in terms of proficiency. Next year, what's the goal? Is it 11% proficiency, 12%? Like, what is the goal? Can we get a goal? And lastly, this board had promised a citywide plan. I believe the board spent over $500,000 on it. This was over 2 years ago. It was supposed to be presented in April. I believe it is now May. There is no citywide plan. Where is the citywide plan? When is it coming? Over 2 years, and the district continues not only to fail, but decline in academic achievement. And people say that voting has consequences. Education has consequences. And the consequences of a lack of education in many of our communities, with many of my students, is death. Education is a life and death proposition. When kids don't have hope, a lot of times they resort to crime.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And so where is the citywide plan?
Okay.
And I would please like a response.
Thank you.
Unlike my other presentations, to which I have gotten none.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Ms. Henry.
Ms. Sharma?
Yes.
Mr. Heiss?
Yes.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard? Yes. Ms. Fowl?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
We are adjourned.